Hello, and welcome to Entangled, the podcast where we explore the science of consciousness, the true nature of reality, and what it means to be a spiritual being having a human experience. I'm your host, Jordan Euclid, and today I'm joined by my friend, Brenda Austin. In this episode, Brenda discusses how her disillusionment with this education system led to her discovering massage therapy and founding Now and Zen Bodyworks. Next, we discuss Brenda's spiritual awakening and the daily practices she's used to cultivate the inner light within her. We then chat about our journeys with psychedelics and how they facilitated the breaking of misconceptions in our worldviews. From there, we consider our food supply and the idea that what you eat in private, you show in public. We end the conversation with some of our highlights from our holographic sound tour to Egypt and Jordan. This outro is titled 5 Egyptian Mysteries. Outros available for this and all episodes at entangledpodcast.substack.com. Music from the show available on the Spotify playlist Entangled The Vibes. Please enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Entangled. Tonight, I am so excited to be catching up with my dear friend, Brenda Austin. Brenda, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, Jordan, how you doing? I'm so delighted to be on the show. What an honor.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you joining me tonight, and also just excited to catch up. It's been, what is it now? It's almost 3 months since we were together every day, all day for that crazy trip to Egypt and Jordan. So it's fun to get to chat with you again.
Yes, it is. Dang, 3 months already?
Crazy,
Wow.
right?
I'm still dreaming about the pyramids and the temples. I feel like I'm there still, like even right now with you.
It's true. Maybe we still are. You
Maybe
know,
we still are. Yeah, subconscious minds.
tell the listeners a little bit about your story, right? Where'd you grow up, and how did you end up on a holographic sound tour to Egypt in November?
Gosh. So I grew up in Los Angeles, California, about 2 miles from USC. Um, I started running track when I was about 10 years old. Literally, when I turned 10, I was on, like, if that was my only Christmas gift that I wanted was to run track and to be on a team. And my aunt B, that lives in New Jersey, she knew some friends that she went to school with who had a track team in LA. So my uncle, he took me there, and next thing you know, I'm on a track team. 14 years later, I run myself and get a track scholarship at Lincoln University, and I ran track there. Got my bachelor's of science there, and wellness, and just really was still figuring out at that time, why did I end up in Missouri? Why did I end up in snow from LA there? It was like, okay, I went where the scholarship was, and it was a great school, a great program. Uh, After that, I graduated May 2007, where we had the recession of the lifetime that I could never remember. And it was planted in my head from young: go to school, get a college education, and you'll be able to create whatever life you want. No, 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 that wasn't for me. That wasn't it. That wasn't my story. It was just like, no, how do people do this? Is this a lie? Is this a scam? Like, it left me May 2027 still working at the same restaurant I was working in my college days, in my college years, of just like, whoa, I did all that to still be doing the same thing. It doesn't feel like I went through a shift. It just feels like, oh, you put on the cap and gown and you're there, and then you're back doing what you were doing before. And, that didn't sit well with me. That didn't sit well with me at all. So probably took me about a month soaking and going through the process of self-sabotage to figure out. And I had talked to one of my uncles, and he had told me, why don't you pursue physical therapy like you wanted to do in the first place? And I was like, you know what, you're right. Let me see what schools are around. So I went ahead and applied and did everything the whole summer to get the application together. And I was calling the lady who was at the front desk, asking her, hey, what do I put on this line? What is this? What does this mean? Because, sometimes it's different schools and you just want to make sure it's right. And I know I got on this lady's nerves. But she still answered it. She still, like, I would literally wait to 8 o'clock in the morning to talk to her to answer just a few questions. Long story short, I mailed everything in. Come gets a letter. I get a letter in the mail the next 2 weeks or so. The letter says we got your application, but you didn't get in the program this year. Try again next year. I'm like, oh, okay. So what in the world? Let me call her again and see. She's like, yeah, I didn't see it. A week or so later, she calls me and tells me the application was on her desk the whole time and it was at the bottom of the application list. I'm like, oh, fun, fun, fun. So after that, I'm like, all right, I'm just going to, take a little year off, go through, do a couple courses online, still work at the restaurant I was working in, and then just apply next year. So I reapplied everything and I sent it in that way. And got another letter in the mail. Yay, yay, yay. I ripped this letter open so much I almost tore the whole letter. And when it came down to reading it, it said, you didn't get in again. You're on the wait list number 11. And I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do with my life? Go back to school? What do I do? What's happening? What's going on? I couldn't figure it out. But what was happening was that with the recession at that time, everybody was losing their jobs, people getting laid off. So they were going back to school to find a different career. And these were people that, were really serious and that took that time to, move forward. And I called the lady, the head of the department of that school for the physical therapy program. And not realizing, usually when you call people, they usually answer the phone, right? Like you leave a message, they get back to you. Nope. When it comes down to people who want to get in the program, she was not responding. She was not calling me back. And it wasn't until that summer to that November, so about 3-4 months later, she called me back, and I was so surprised she called me back. I left her a message almost every weekend because I didn't know what was going to happen with my life. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where to go. I'm still in Missouri. Do I go back to LA and live? Nope, it's chaos going there. Where do I find my footing? Where do I find my place, in life? So once she talked to me, she gave me so much insight about the application, and everything was a point system. And she broke down the application, and she broke down um, gosh, this is so crazy. The professional letters that was mailed separately in the envelope by themselves. I didn't know what they said about me at all.
Mm-hmm.
There was misspelled words. There was fragment sentences she said. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I couldn't even proofread that because it was in an envelope. But still, that was part of the point system.
Mm.
So yeah, and so even my high school GPA, she was like, if you would have got a 4.0 instead of like a 3.6, then that would have put you, more points ahead of everybody. And I'm like, yeah, I have like 3 college degrees right now. I'm not going back to high school at this point. But it was good information that she was telling me. So I took that information. I asked her about a college where their promotion was amazing. Kind of got on your nerves after a while. It was embedded in your brain every time they had open enrollment, and they did a good job with it, with their marketing. And I asked her about that program, and she said, you know what, a lot of people do that. They go to that school and then they transfer over. You can do that. So that was my next step. Okay, I have something. I have something under my feet. I'm going to go ahead and apply for the school. I go to the school, wasn't too far from where I lived or I worked. Stopped in there, went through the financial aid, everything. And so because I had already used a Pell Grant for my Bachelor of Science degree, I had to take out loans. And they were a different type of school. There wasn't anything. I was getting myself through school, but paying for everything myself, scholarships and stuff like that. And I wasn't using anything from my parents. And so when it came down to the options of taking loans out, I was like, I don't want to take out, many loans. So she gave me an option and she said, why don't you have any of your parents that, can do your tax return? Because at this time I wasn't 24 yet. And she said, you're going to need, somebody to go forward. After that, I called my mom and asked for a tax return. My mom told me no. I had to wait a whole another 6 to 7 months until I turned 24 and then went through that whole open enrollment. So next thing you know, I start 2009 in June in the massage therapy program, getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning, getting into school, going through the course system, figuring out, oh my gosh, is this something I really want to do? But still at the end of that is saying, a golden star, a sparkle, something that's going to heighten your life, something that you need to stick with, go ahead and go for it. So I went through about the 9-month program with the school, graduated, top of the class, passed the MBLEX, which is the massage therapy program. Excuse me, the massage therapy state test. And that was the beginning journey of the massage career. So now it's like, well, let's get a job. Let's do something. And at that time, when I took out those student loans for the massage industry, massage license, I decided that, you know what, this might just be my haul. This might just be my stop. Maybe that first no going to that physical therapy school, and then that second no going to applying to that physical therapy school. Maybe that's just not where I'm supposed to go. Maybe I'm looking at it as something that I'm not supposed to move forward in.
Yeah.
Let me look at my other options. You know what
The
I mean?
obstacle is the way.
The obstacles is the way. And I took that and I said, okay, I graduated. I have this license. Let me go ahead and see what it is. So I applied for different massage jobs. And my colleagues that I ran track with, or was in school with, or in the program with, the massage therapy program, they were getting these jobs before me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like great for them, but whoa, what is happening? It took me about 2 to 3 months to really realize the amount of time I was spending of people to tell me I'm good enough for this job. I'm good enough to make this amount of money. I'm good enough to be worth this. I was waiting for people to tell me that you're good enough to have this pay rate. You're good enough to have this job. And I said, enough is enough. I need to create my own way. I need to create my own job. And I got up one morning and I was sitting up. I think it was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I was sitting up in bed. And I just was like, no, no, no. So that day, I decided to go to every lease, every office building, and see what the options, what the process was for me to apply for this business to rent and start my massage career, to start my massage business. And that's where Now and Body Works was created in Jefferson City, Missouri. And that was a thing where the epiphany of being in massage school and running track, as soon as the instructor started to talk to this class, really, I felt like she was talking to me, but talk to the class about sports massage. And I knew everything about the body. I just didn't know the muscles, name of the muscles. I didn't know the structure. I didn't know the names for it. I knew the stretches that she was saying, all in order. It was like I already had the book instilled in my brain to do it. And I was like, okay, this is something I have to do. I was an empath who didn't like to shake people's hands, hug people, be close to people, be in a room full of people. Like it was just people at this point, like, ah. And I needed to, I guess, go through that process to realize, like, hey, you can do this. You're supposed to stick with this. This is going to take you and build you to something more and greater. Even though it didn't feel comfortable. That's just what it was. It didn't feel comfortable at that time. So I created the business. I created Nouns and Body Works. I did chair massages. I was at the state. I mean, I did any event that somebody wanted a massage therapist there. They would just invite me to come. It would be sometimes a little vendor fee, and sometimes it just wasn't, because they knew that I had the ambition. They knew that I was literally on the run for my life, on the run for my career, on the run to create something great for myself. And those people that trusted in me, that mentored me in a way, that see something great in myself that I didn't even see in myself at first. They seen it in me. I didn't see it in myself. Like they see the light. I'm like, where is the light? I don't see it yet. They seen it. And that was great. And the amount of energy that I put into that business and creating that business is what kept me afloat. Then I realized, like, oh, so it takes you about 3 to 4 months to process something, to shift out of this. It takes you a few months to shift out of this. Now what? And I'm thinking like, man, 3 to 4 months, that's kind of a short time if you're working on something, but then that's a really long time to be stuck in the same place. Then it really is. It really is. Then I start to realize my childhood, things I went through, my brain process, things that I was thinking and saying and doing, and people I was being around. I had to shift out of that. I had to change that. I had to realize that I was activating my life in a way that I didn't even like anymore. I wasn't even comfortable. And I had to pull away, you know? I had to pull away and I had to go within. And once I started to go within and started to retrain my brain, as people would say, as I started to be alive, feel alive, I started to feel different. Started to look different. People started to see me differently and was asking, well, what's going on with you? Where's all this
Yeah.
positive stuff come from? I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm not about all that anymore. You know, it's like, how do you respond? Like, yeah, I'm a new person, but for the good. But still, those people didn't see me. They didn't see how much work I did for myself. They didn't see how much time I put into myself, you know? They didn't see how much when you by yourself, you're like, man, I don't really like myself that much. Like, whoa, I don't like these habits. Like, what's going on? And finally, you're like, man, I truly love myself. I truly care for myself. And that
Yeah.
passion, within me, it just drove me deeper and deeper to put that momentum into my business, but into my
Yeah.
personal life as well.
It's cool that you say that, and I have to say that, like, one of the things that really drew me to you on our trip was just I could just feel this energy, this passion inside of you. Just like
Mm,
exactly as you described it. I don't know, just like I could tell you're just a force to be reckoned with, and a force for good. And I wanna ask you about a phrase you used, and I don't remember the exact words, but you said something about, finding that light inside of me.
hmm
I'd be curious if you could expand on, what do you mean by that, and what has that journey been for you to find that light, growing up?
I think people call it a spiritual awakening, and I feel like we have so many different levels of spiritual awakening. Like I had one last month and I had another one last week. I'm like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh, this is getting awesome. But when you are in a place where people call anxiety, depression, um, addicted to stuff, substance abuse, however you want to say, all those things are lower vibration. You
yeah,
living in fear, you living in anger, you living in guilt, right? We all know that those aren't happy feelings and happy thoughts. That's where I was in different parts of my life. I was blaming people. I was the victim. I was, why are you not blah, blah, this, blah, blah, that, right? It left me feeling like all I'm doing is running on a treadmill that's going in a circle, like a little rat, like a little mouse. It's that spinning wheel. And I'm working on getting to the start, but the start is the end and the end is the start. And all I'm doing is just keep on passing it by. And so the feeling of, once I forgave a lot of people and a lot of things, a lot of hurt and a lot of anguish that was within me that I was holding on to, I was like, man, I'm a big grudge person. I do not like this about myself. Why am I holding this grudge? Like, okay, that experience happened. I don't need to be so mad and angry and bring it up to people. Like, they know what they did. I know what they did. I know how they said it. Yes, they hurt me, but I realized that I was acting from a place of the little girl that was hurt as a child too. That little girl, oh my gosh, you know? And once I started to heal that little girl from all that hurt, I started to shine bright within myself. I started to feel less heavy. I started to free myself. I started to feel just this bright aura around me of just love, like just a warm hug each and every day I wake up, and it was a place and a peacefulness and a balance that I wanted to get to in myself to release. And that light within me and that light that shines within me, it now isn't just within inside me, it radiates out of me. And I just want everybody to get to a spot, get to a point that they know what that feels like, and them doing it themselves, not waiting for somebody to do it or say it to them. And I think that that's really important, you know?
Yeah. Did you find any good tactics or yeah, like good tactics for both cultivating those beliefs in yourself, right? Number one, and number two, any more like practical daily practices that you did to help cultivate that as well.
Yes, of course. So I think for me, I started to I don't know why I was led to follow Oprah. Maybe my mom would get her VHS and record them, and she had like 30 episodes that she needed to catch up. Maybe that was just the first person, or maybe it was something that caught my eye. But I started with Oprah. You know, I was gravitated to her or her story. And I knew the times that she was born in wasn't, you know, love and light times, you know, when things that she experienced. And I started to follow her journey, and she really didn't get out of her way or, you know, get into the career that she wanted because people kept on telling her no, or a man was better than her. And I started to follow that. And it was a YouTube, I believe, called Leadership Success. And it's about a hour and a half. And I believe some college students are interviewing her, and at the university, the college woman is interviewing her. And I listened to that for probably a month straight. Like, you know, people watch a TV or a show or Netflix before they went to bed. I would get my YouTube, and I would listen. And she started to like unlock things in my brain. And it was words I didn't understand at that time. And it started to shift. And I started to awaken more and more and more. And then I started to realize, oh my gosh, the people that she is interviewing are amazing in these books, in these book clubs. I started to realize, like, wow, they're talking about spirituality in this interview, in this interview, in this interview. So the tactics and things that I started to learn was from them, the programs that they have, the books that they've written. Oh, I need to read more? Okay, let me go ahead and read as much as I can. I don't care if I have to read the book more than once until I get it, until I understand the message and view it with different lenses each time. That was my thing. Another thing is I really just like journaling because once I read it, I was like, this does not sound good. This is not, you know, this is, whoa, man. And you start to self sabotage and you start to go through your loop and you start to, but really it's meant to like purge. It's meant to like release. It's meant to like break free and break through. And I've just, and I actually now I enjoy going back and reading my journals because I put the dates or I put the mood or I put the time and day, and then it clicks for me to remember, like, yeah, Brenda, that wasn't a great week, but you got through here because look at this journal entry, you know? Journaling was a big thing for me. Another thing is that I'm a water person. I have to be submerged in water. So I know people are like, oh, I don't like baths. I can't stay in baths that long. I sweat. I don't like to sweat. They have all these things. For me, like for real, for me, I can stay in a bathtub for 3 or 4 hours. I put my Dead Sea salt. I put my pink Himalayan salt. I put, you know, my roses or my crystals or my candles that I create, you know, around me. I play my playlist or my incense, whatever it is. I create the mood for me. And that's another place, that's another playground for me to release in the water and use the water, the spirit of the water to assist in healing me and assist in speaking to me so I can hear the water as well. You know, it's such an honor to be, to have water in our body, to be created from water, you know, to cleanse us, to heal us and all those things. So I create that atmosphere as well. Another thing is getting massages, like muscles and working and tense and typity type and text messages and, you know, all that stuff that puts a lot of strain on our muscles and our shoulders and our back. And once we feel that release within our body, it sends us from out of fight or flight into like a systematic like feeling of, you know, like euphoria. Like we feel amazing, we feel blessed. The person who just put all that energy and time and work to assist in us, and we feel that within us, it's just like, thank you. You know, you get emotional sometimes after massages because you really do feel a better release when you do, because somebody took time and to care about you to want to make you feel better. So those are a few things. What about you?
I'd say my spiritual awakening was definitely more abrupt for sure. It involved really getting over the mental roadblock that spirituality and science, right, are not antithetical, but rather complementary at their fundamental nature. That started when I saw a documentary that introduced me to a bunch of metaphysical concepts. And a
Mm,
lot of what I was seeing, like it didn't mention psychedelics at all, but what it was talking about really resonated with experiences I'd had on psychedelics.
mm.
And then 2 weeks after that, I decided to, really explore consciousness with a high dose of psychedelics and had like a breakthrough ego dissolution moment that really
Mm,
validated a lot of these ideas I'd just been introduced to.
yeah.
But I'd say since that time, transcendental meditation for sure has been the biggest thing for me to really incorporate that spiritual realm of the absolute into my daily life, and to I think directly experience the physiological benefits of that, and to recognize that we are manifestations of the divine, that this light inside of us is connected to something eternal and of pure bliss and harmony.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Psychedelics was introduced to me during about 2 years ago in the summer of June. And I was going through a tough time with the parental, and I was triggered again. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm triggered again by this. This feels like this is the most heaviest thing in my life. And say it happened on Sunday, the next week was a Saturday. I was around these people and they were like, we were working out. And they're like, what's going on with you? Why are you so distant? What's happening? You seem different. And I was like, I'm going through this, and I'm just blaming the person and blaming and blaming and blaming. And then somebody has said to me, you should go talk to, this person, because they were experiencing that too. And they did some psychedelics that really helped them. You should go talk to them and see if they. So I ran over there, like, and I signed up the next month, and I was like, okay, I'm going. And they're like, oh, you're really gonna go? Usually we tell people, they just like, oh, okay, maybe that's not for me, or maybe that is for me, or maybe not right now. I'm like, no, this has been an ongoing thing. I need help to release this. I don't want to experience this anymore. So I went for 3 days, 3 ceremonies. And
What
yeah, it was in
what
Florida.
psychedelic was it?
It was ayahuasca.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, ayahuasca. And it was a very interesting experience for me. The first one was at night, that evening. We got in about Friday, started, I don't know, 8:30 or something, with all the ceremonies and the prayers. And I'm looking around like, I felt like everybody knew what was going to happen, and I just didn't. Like, I was lost. Took my first cup, sat by the fires outside, and it was in Florida. So, you know how that Florida weather's just rainy on and off and humid and rainy. So it was just one of those nights. And it was a full moon. I'll never forget it. It was Sagittarius, strawberry full moon. And it was, I was outside. I just knew I needed to be in a fire. We had a tent that was outside, a couple tents. And with the experience of that, one thing they stood to me that I never forget, they were like, if you need to purge, go on your hands and your knees. So I felt like it was coming up. And so I got the trash can that they provided for us, and I put my head in. All the medicine was working in everybody quicker, it seemed like, than it was for me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, release all this, like, release. You start to go through your things in your head, and I'm saying this all in my head. And there was a guy that was in my tent, and it medicine just took him, and he's like purging, like a whole person is coming out of him. Like, it was such an excruciating sound for me. I felt like he was on top of my back purging. And I was like, oh my gosh, this medicine is making me more sensitive. Like, whoa, oh my gosh, I don't think I want this to happen, because the sensitivity comes, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, there's people around. Am I going to, go a little cuckoo at this time? Like, you start to freak out. Then I had to calm myself down. And next thing you know, the music got me, and the medicine hit me like whoosh. And I had a friend who was my client, which I call her my soul sister now, and she had participated in ayahuasca in Peru, and in Costa Rica, and she had told me her experience, and I told her I was finally going, and she was like, "I'm so happy for you. I'm so proud of you." She said, "If you ever get stuck or you ever fail, just smile and just be grateful." And at that time, that was the best thing that she could have said to me because I got stuck in a lot of places. Next thing you know, I'm seeing a frog. Next thing you know, I'm going through this experience. And I felt like I was going through initiation of like a welcoming in a sense. And it didn't feel good of a welcoming, but everything that's going through your head and the process, the smells, the sound, the people that was there, the facilitators was there to assist us and help us whatever we needed, you know? And that first night was pretty tough for me. It was pretty tough. And there was things that I was thinking and seeing. You don't know what it was. There was a lot of craziness going on in the world 2 years ago on the news in every state, really, you know. And one of the guys, he seen that I was struggling because it was time to eat. And they said, if you're doing a daytime ceremony, don't eat. So I'm like, water, I need something, tea, you know, something. So I'm walking to the kitchen and he nudges me and he's like, "Hey, you okay?" And I guess maybe he said something to me before, but I'm still stuck in my head because I'm thinking I created everything. All the chaos that was happening in the world. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, did I create this? Did this happen? Is this real? Oh my gosh, I'm so stuck in my head." So he was like, "Hey, are you good?" So I asked him, you know, is it? He was like, "Oh no, it's real. You didn't create this." And I'm like, "Okay." Like, and so he was seeing me and he was talking to me. Then another guy walked up to me. He's like, "You really did good work last night." He was like, "All I could do was see you." He's like, "Your ancestors was there with you the whole time." He was like, "They were just helping you and they were just there for you. Whatever you needed, I know you thought you were by yourself because literally it was raining. I was still the only one outside, you know, except for the facilitators. Everybody went in the tent and it was just like, people are there, you know, you can feel the energy, but it was interesting. A funny thing about the psychedelics that one of the ladies that switched shifts, that she went and ate lunch, and again the whole purging thing, and I never purged. I never purged. I never purged. Nothing ever came out of me and out of my mouth. And she came to me the next day and she said, "I went to lunch and you came back." She was laughing. And I was like, "What? What did I do?" She was like, "Your head was in that bucket the whole night." I said, "It was in the bucket the whole night?" I said, "Oh no, it couldn't have been." She was like, "I see so many things." I was like, "I seen the sacred geometry shapes." I was like, "Oh wow, those are real, you know?" And I was like, "Whoa," you know, just the movement and the shapes and how I was breathing with it and it would change in a sense. Like, you know, it was just very blissful in that sight. But things that I had seen and experienced going through, I didn't understand. People who was there, people who was experiencing it with me that literally physically wasn't there. It was so after that, I didn't go back to that facility, but I found some shamans. And that next year, a year and a half, I went almost every 3 to 4 months to assist me with what I still was going through because you have to integrate and you have to do the work, you know, for what you want to release or some things that come up that you didn't realize that was stuck deep down inside of you that you just kept pushing and pushing down, you know. And so I had found a community of people who really understood the medicine and they introduced me to other medicines. There's a medicine called Yopo, and it basically seeds the jungle, which they turn into a powder, kind of like hape, like the tobacco snuff. And um, after we took 2 cups of Aya, I had told the shaman, I told her, "I want to do Yopo today." She's like, "You want to do Yopo?" Like she's super excited about the medicine. And I'm like, "Yeah, I think it's time." So she came and got me and she was like, "You ready? It's Yopo time." And I said, "No, I need 10 more minutes." She said, "Brenda, there's no time here." I said, "You're right, but can you give me like the fake time for 10 minutes?" And she started laughing. She started laughing. She was like, "Okay, okay, I'll come back." And so I started my prayer, you know, and I started going through like whatever I needed because at this point, I'm a little scared. I'm a
Uh-huh.
little terrified. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't usually scare, that easy. Maybe I'm a little nervous, but I was kind of scared. I'm like, well, can I back out of this? I'm like, she's not gonna let me back out because she already know I need this. Went to the bathroom, drank some water. She came up to me. She did the prayer, one nostril, next nostril. And I just felt it was like I went to another realm, another
Wow.
dimension, another place.
Wait,
And
so
I
you drank it through your nose? What do you mean your nostrils?
no, it's a seeds that they grind up into
Uh-huh.
powder, similar to the rape or the hape, which is a
Uh-huh.
tobacco snuff.
Oh, no way. So this wasn't ayahuasca.
They provide ayahuasca, yes, but they introduced me to other medicines as well. So the yopo is seeds from the jungle that they grind up into a powder in herbs, and it has an effect. So they have a tepe, which is connected from the shaman mouth to the person they're putting in the nose, which would be me,
Okay.
one nostril at a time.
Got it.
And she blew left then right nostril. Immediately, I had the urgency to purge, and when we purge into the ground. They dig holes and we purge. That perch hole was my perch hole for the rest of the night because it took me through about a 3 or 4 hour experience, and usually people would last for about 15 minutes. It took me through my ancestors talking to me and teaching me and taking me back to different places and different things where they were saying, like, you see why you had to go through this? You see why you had to experience that? You see why you had to see that? You see why we showed you that? Like, it went through that, and I was literally having a conversations with them. And it was a awakened experience where I'm like, oh, I'm not just crazy. Like, this is real. Because they come and they go. They might be clear one day, they might not be. And it was a whole blown out conversation for me. And at that time with Yopo, I lost my eyesight. I visually couldn't see. And I knew that I had an orange sweater on, like touching myself. Like I was going like through the process of like feel, touch, smell. And at this point, I'm like, wait, am I here or did I dream that? Because it just took me to a whole different place. And I found myself like eating dirt. And I was like, oh my gosh, wait, no, this is dirt. Okay, yes, I am here. I don't need to eat this. Like, I was like, oh, wait, hold on. That's grass. No, I don't want to swallow that. Like, spit that out. Like, it was pretty gross. And so, but I knew that I had an orange sweater. So I knew that the only thing is that like my touch was okay. My taste was okay. I can smell. I could feel the sun coming up, and I couldn't see. And that was the last thing of what my ancestors were telling me that I needed to go through to see again. And I've had to follow them because I didn't realize I was hard headed until they led me on a journey, a structural journey, and why I needed to learn the chakras, why I needed to learn crystals, why I needed to learn what this people's modality was, why I needed to, it took me through all that. And then once I started to realize what it was, I followed it. And when I followed it, it started to lead me to speaking positive about myself and positive things. And it just clicked. It clicked. I was like, oh, this medicine does not need to be tough. They do not need to be hard. You do not need to be curled up in a ball to get the messages that you need. Like it's my thought process still, my thought process. And I was like, oh, okay. So I need to continue to work on that in a different way. And that's what I did. I opened my mind up a little bit more. And I think at that time I started to listen to Don Miguel, The Four Agreements. Have you heard of that one? And you haven't? So the agreements are basically always do your best, keep your word, in a sense, don't judge people, don't assume, in that sense. And so I started to realize how much I was not doing my best, how much I was assuming like the assumption with psychic abilities was like, wow, like I already know what you have to say before you say it. But I couldn't do that because it really was an evasion of privacy without realizing that's what I was doing. It's just like I have this sense about this and I already know what it is. And it was still going through the process of just learning the rules about spirituality. There's so many different rules that you have to play into and stay within. You can't just do your own thing. Like there's absolutely no way. So going back to the ayah, that was my intention that I was working on for about the year. I found it through the medicine of Yopo. And that psychedelic experience was awakening for me. It was heart opening for me. Then that's where my light shined a little bit brighter. And that parental that I was still having a conflict with, I no longer was holding that person responsible for the things that I experienced as a child. And I had to think about it and look at it like my parental did the best
Yeah.
that they could. That was the best time and the best thing. I mean, things could have been worse. You know, when I think about it, things could have been worse. But it
Yeah.
was just what I needed to push me up out to be the person that I am. You know, and I'm forever grateful for that experience, even though it was tough going through it, but still.
Totally. I can imagine.
Yeah.
And curious if you'd be willing to, touch a little deeper into what were some of those experiences that you worked through.
Yeah. So one of them was the experience that I was mentioning earlier. I'll start with that one, was with my mom. Me and my mom were, how she would tell me, as I was born, I was a mama's girl. My mom had got sick or something like that, and she was in a hospital for about a week or two. My father was around, and I became a daddy's girl. So when it came into that motion, my dad was in and out of our lives for my whole life. So it was some part of resentment that I always felt, you know, or it was something that I just was like, whoa, you know. And the arguments and the different things that me and my mom didn't agree on throughout my life, it led me to just not feel loved the way I thought that I should have been loved. So, and I think that that's a lot of things with a lot of people as they experience. And when I was about 2024, I called her and talked to her, and I was not nice to her. I was disrespectful and all type of things. And but I told her everything that was in my head that was bothering me. And I feel like that's a good release. And I didn't like go in a cray, cool time, you know, to like, but it was I needed it to get out. I needed to purge that information. And one thing I always bring up is that I ran track for 14 years. My brother played baseball. He ran track for a little bit. And my mom only came to 4 track meets of mine. And that really bothered me because when you're at these track meets and you're traveling all these states and you're doing good, you know, the people that was supposed to be there, like they rooted me on. The mothers that were there took me in and loved me as if I was their daughter. The coaches were amazing to me, you know, but still, when you go home and you see and you're around this person and share this stuff, even if I won 4 gold medals that day, it wasn't an interest to her, you know, and it just kind of sucked because you go from this high energy back down to this depressive energy, and I felt stuck, you know, and so the situation that really ticked me off that weekend was it was Mother's Day, and we had just opened up. Well, we were still closed, and I had did some mobile massages for some people that just wanted to treat their wives, wanted to treat their girlfriends, wanted to treat their sisters, and I did a couple of those, and I hadn't worked in 3 months really, and my feet were really bothering me. So I was like going to drive to an outlet, and so I called my mom. Let me call my mom and tell her, you know, Happy Mother's Day. They're about 2 hours difference from me. I'm in Central Time, they're on West Coast time. And my mom says, "Hey, Brand, how you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm good." Told her about my day. She was like, "Oh, well, you finally called me." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, your brother and sister already called me to tell me Happy Mother's Day." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know it was a time limit." Like what I was working, you know? And it just like triggered me, like the comparison again, you know, the comparison of this, the comparison of that. And me being a middle child, you just always feel like you stuck in between of this and that. And I'm like, oh, was I supposed to get up at the crack of dawn and say Happy Mother's Day? No, I probably could have, but you got one thing on your mind, which is to make money, which is to grind, which is to drive, which is to make sure you're going to all these places safe and sound. You know, and once I got to unwind and relax, it was like, okay, let me call. You know, and so from that time, it was just kind of like, did I set that expectation up for myself from doing it the past before? Or was it still being stuck in between your siblings in that way to be compared to they talk to her every day or they have interest in this. They talk about things that I don't talk about. They don't talk about spirituality with me. They don't talk about chakras. They talk about fashion and what's the latest things that happen with people that they don't even know. They can tell you the whole life story about people, the favorite dress, who they dated. I don't have that information in my head. That's not stuff that interests me. So when it came down to that, that was something that I did meditate and pray about. Hey, I want to at least be open and closer to her to open that. You know, open that door. Is it me? Is it everything that I'm holding on to? Let me help myself so I don't have that wall up anymore. Let me unblock that. And so that's what I worked through the plant medicine to do. And even though that sounds great, and it probably should have ended with a great, but still at this time, me and my mother's relationship is still not all the way how I would love it to be. And I've accepted that. And I've said, I'm just going to be me. I'm just going to live my life, but I'm just going to worry about me. And anybody that comes into my life that wants to listen or wants my assistance, I'm gonna go all in, just like if they're my family or my
Mm-hmm.
friend, my loved one, regardless of what it is, you know,
Mm-hmm.
just to
Mm-hmm.
give back the reciprocity.
Yeah. You know, and it's really interesting story you bring up, and I feel like one of the consistent themes I find with folks who have discovered spirituality that weren't, brought up with it, is that
Hmm.
almost universally it's caused very significant strains on pre-existing relationships, right? And it's been, very difficult to work through that. And I'm curious, like you kind of touched on it, but like how has that been? Where it's like how do you think about that transition, and is there a way to safely navigate it so that you don't lose, your prior friends, but that you also can find a community that's open to some of these topics that folks who don't believe in spirituality just frankly don't want to talk about.
You know, I feel like there's not just one group for us. I realize I'm a traveler. I travel from group to group to group to either enlighten or be inspired. And once I realized that, I literally go through it still every kind of like every season. When I elevate myself or I get into that enlightenment phase, who I was attracting or what stage I was at, I pull away from them.
Hmm.
And it feels like a loss, it feels like a breakup, and it feels like a grief moment, right? Because, oh, you miss talking to Chad and seeing him on Saturdays and playing video games, or you miss going to the spa with Nancy. You know, it's not something like that. So in that moment that I share with people, I just be myself because I want them to be themselves.
Hmm.
And when I realize that every time I'm within a group of people, um, I know that I'm not going to be there that long. And I start telling people now, like, hey, you know, we met at this level and this energy, and this is what we have in common. But just because we don't talk or anything happens, don't think that you did anything wrong and I don't like you anymore or I
Hmm.
don't want to talk to you. Just know that I'm continuously working on myself to be better for myself. But like everybody has a mission and why they're on this earth, right? Right on
Hmm.
this planet. And why waste? And I wasted so much time being in a depressive state. I wasted so much time being in a victim state. I don't want to waste any more time in in the places that I don't need to be in,
Hmm.
you know. And I have to do myself, you know, the justice of giving myself the all. So I did go through that big thing, probably about really, I still go through it, but I think the last 2 or 3 years, it really was really heavy for me because I started to realize, oh, this person was just the interferer to introduce me to this person. So this
Hmm.
person can it starts
Hmm.
to become a
Hmm.
chain, right? And then you start to like enjoy that, once you
Yeah.
start to say, oh, that's why I seen that person at the grocery store for them to introduce and it becomes a beautiful journey and you start to enjoy it more because instead of trying to control your life you start to go onto the flow of how life is meant for you to go on.
Hmm. You discover
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Tao and just flow with it.
Yeah, the flow is the best. Having an open mind, an open heart, and your faith.
Yeah.
Your faith is very important for that. And then just letting your guard down, having trust that everything is going to we work out and not worry. And if you're saying, hey, I was great yesterday, but today I woke up not feeling that great. Like, accept that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just not cool right now. Like,
Yeah.
this is just what it is. What do I do to get myself out of this? What necessary tools and steps help me get out of this?
Yeah.
And you have to do that. Sometimes it takes me 5 to 7 days if I work myself to the ground.
Mhm.
If I know that I haven't, like when I went to Egypt with you, we can touch on that in a second. I worked for like 2, 3 months straight, and was like happy to have a sleep. It was like, oh, and then I was like, did I get enough sleep? Because I'm not tired right now. Like, how do
Mhm.
people just fall asleep without being tired? Like, what do they do? Oh, okay, let me listen to a podcast. Let me listen to Entangled. Let me go ahead and see what's going on. So get my mind and then learn some new information too. Or let me
Yeah.
listen to Audible. Let me do a little workout, a little sit-ups, do a little jump rope, go for a swim, whatever it is. You started to discover different things without you being tired. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Um, so you mentioned that, you're still working on your relationship with your mom's not quite where, you'd like it to be, but moving in the right direction.
For sure.
Curious, how would you say your relationship is with your father these days?
With the journey of him going through his life and picking and choosing how he wants to live his life, I think I forgave him a lot sooner than I did, my mom. And that was, he chose to, kind of go through a life where it was, what people would call kind of hardcore. He decided to live that. And when I mentioned about track, I had a lot of great people that were in my life that were father figures to me. So
Mhm.
I can, call and talk to him, no problem. But it was a time when I graduated college and he was at my grandmother's house, and it was a beautiful morning, and we don't live too far from USC. I mean, excuse me, LAX airport. And he was drinking coffee and smoking a cigarette. And I was like, hey, I'm going to talk to you. And he said to me, I don't know how to talk to you. You got a whole college degree now. And I was like, oh, okay. I said, well, I still speak English. And he, it was like, I still speak English. And I was like, so this is how? And I was like, well, and I started saying stuff like, well, the sky is really blue today. Did the Lakers play last night? Like different stuff to just throw it out there. And then you just realize that he just didn't want to talk. And I took that time, I think, and just realized like, you know what? He's always shown me this person. He's
Mm.
never changed. He's always been like that. And I just accepted that.
Yeah.
So even though he wasn't there, it was times where me and my sister and my brother bought a sweater for him for Christmas, and his birthday's in August. We didn't see him until his birthday. Like, here's your Christmas present in
Mhm.
August, and it's a sweater. Like stuff like that. And um I know like girls usually have like, oh, I'm a daddy's girl or this and that. I just became such a person that people knew that I was going through stuff and just loved on me anyway.
Mhm.
Was just being nice to me, fed me, took me to places, made me smile, with different things. And if I didn't go through the childhood I went through, I would never experience all that love from so many people,
Mhm.
all that attention, all that cheering me on, all that
Yeah.
support, from those people. So it is what it is. Like I
Yeah.
said, I feel like it took me a minute for my mom to really release and see her for who she really is. And I just know that throughout the years she tried her best. She did her absolute best, and like I said, Yopo really helped me to release and see her in a different light.
Yeah. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets back to what we were talking about earlier with regards to like finding that light within you. And I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest things that people today almost universally struggle with, and that ends up manifesting itself in many ways, is all around, am I worthy enough? Am I worthy of love? Right? And I think that we live in a society that in a structure of a society that makes it very difficult to break out of that hamster wheel you were talking about, right? And I think it's almost as if the system is kind of designed to suppress that inner light within you rather than really to help bring it out.
Okay, we're gonna go there, huh? So, in the journey of spiritual awakening, you start to get pretty, well, at least I started to get, I'm not gonna speak for everybody, I started to get pretty disgusted with how things are. Our grocery stores, the fact that processed foods is not real food, the fact that our fruits and vegetables are made in labs, the fact that we're brushing our teeth with fluoride, but we need our third eye to be open to get these messages to be the light. Like we need all of these things. And that led me to really go vegan. I was eating processed foods. I wasn't a soda drinker. I wasn't a heavy meat eater, but I did eat chicken and fish and turkey. And slowly I started to take that in my body. And then as I started to do that, my skin started to break out. I started to have a different effect on my body where people are like, oh, I'm vegan. My hair is soft and growing, my nails is growing. And it was just like a reverse effect to me.
Mm.
But then I went back to meat for a minute and I was like, oh no, I can feel the animal
Mm.
death in a sense. Like I know that's pretty deep, but it was just like, oh no. Then I was like, okay, is it this your thought process? You disgusting yourself out. I was like, oh no, no. I can't do meat. It's just too heavy for me. It takes forever to digest. My mood changes. Like I can feel the heaviness within my body. And once you start to realize like, hey, like literally you are what you eat, or what people will say, well, one of my clients said this to me, what you eat in private you show in public,
Hmm.
you know and that was just a thing of like, oh, whoa, that's gonna stick with me forever because that's true. I can tell when people are heavy wine drinkers. I can tell when people, are heavy meat eaters. I can tell if they're not releasing how they need to release, with the lymphatic system being blocked. Learning more about herbs on this journey, learning about different vitamins and minerals, and really realizing like all the food that, say, a gorilla eats. A gorilla does not get their protein from eating meat products. They're introduced to meat. They eat a lot of plants and vegetables. And look how big a gorilla is. I mean, huge, intelligent, smart, like super smart, you know? And that intelligence of that animal is getting the nurturing and the downloads and the DNA from what they're eating, you know, to connect, to work together, to get that energy, to get that sunlight, how everything starts to flow, how it's internally connected. And yeah, that took me for a loop once I realized, like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it to myself for brushing my teeth. It took me forever to find the right toothpaste,
Mm-hmm.
because when you change in deodorant, I was okay with doing deodorant, but with me massaging or me moving around, one too many massages, you like, okay, a little sweaty. So it took me to, at this point, I realized like, hey, I haven't even put on deodorant. I haven't even
Mm-hmm.
bought deodorant. My body started to cleanse so much
Wow.
through. Yeah, it was a beautiful journey. And that me going vegan was, when did I go to Barbados? 2017 or 18?
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep. That's cool. I had a question for you, and I told it. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah, I know it's crazy. I mean, it drives me wild just how um our entire system with food and big ag and big pharma is just so focused on the wrong things when it comes to health and wellness and self actualization of human potential.
Well, that's their intention. They
Hmm.
want us to stay sick. They want us to be sick. They don't want us to ever get better. They're making us sick by everything, by putting it in the food. By I
Water.
mean the the water. I'm going through a huge water thing right now. I bought a whole water distillery where I can
That's awesome.
purify. I mean, I changed all the faucets. It's two faucets in the house that I'm still looking on Amazon and stuff. So I think I just need to change the whole faucet so I can, just really get the faucets and purify the water, because the tap water, washing my face, brushing my teeth with it, is still disgusting. And the
Yeah.
amount of stuff that came out the distillery with the water is just, it's, oh my gosh, it's gross. It looks
Mm.
like a whole, oh, so nasty. But when we know better, we do better, right? We know better, we realize. It's still when I go to the grocery store, even if it says organic, or even if I'm like, you know what, they saying it's organic, or when I started to realize the numbers on the ones that we scan, like the 4, the 8, the 2, and realize like those numbers, that means that if it starts with the 4 and it says it's organic, it is not really organic. It's just
Mm.
a number. And we're thinking like, oh, it's the number that scans because that's how they keep track. No, they're letting us know in plain sight that it is not organic.
Mm.
Or the toothpaste. If you look on the back of your toothpaste and it had a dark green strip or a red strip or a blue strip, they are telling us in plain sight that this is not healthy and we should not be brushing our teeth with it because it's the level that they put on there,
Mm.
and it's it really makes me feel uncomfortable sometimes when I go to a grocery store or if I got to shop. Going to the farmer's market now is like it's a surprise for me.
Mm.
It's like, oh, I knew you grew this. Are you growing this for pet? Like, I literally asked her, do you grow this for pesticides? I know this happens. I know stuff happens, because I really don't want to put that stuff in my body anymore.
Yeah.
And if they say no and I can taste it, or if I have it on the counter or the fridge, it lasts so long.
Mm.
It lasts the longest. And that's how I'd be able to tell. If you buy some bananas in the store, the size of the different grocery stores, you can tell how big it is, how small it is, and what size it was before. Or if the color just changes, like, oh, we had purple potatoes in the past and we don't even see those all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're all just starchy potatoes, just white potatoes. So I can talk on and on about food, because when I came back from Egypt, I probably fasted for about a week or two, because coming back to here and having all that fresh food we had, and just getting, the food being cooked as much fresh as they had it. But when we went to Jordan, that's when I really seen like the difference, how the food, how it tastes, how it looked, and everything
Mm.
like that. But it took me a minute to like come back here and really buy some stuff. I think I ate lentil beans. I make lentil beans and put some mushrooms and peppers and stuff in there, and I ate those. They did a lot of juicing. Bless.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, yeah, we could go on about food, but you brought up Egypt, so we got to get there for sure. So
Yes.
um, maybe let's talk about what is holographic sound, and how did you get involved in that movement?
So I went to Barbados for the last time about 2016, I believe. And I was driving past the Addison Convention Center, and I seen there was a lot of cars. So I was like, oh, let me see what this is about. I go in, pay, get the pamphlet of the speakers, and one of them was Dr. Paul. And I was like literally 10 minutes before he was about to start. He was setting up. There's this like little room. There was chairs there. There's a whole bunch of people like waiting, and I'm like, okay, seat in the front between two people who I don't know. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get in here, sat here. So he explains a little bit who he is and what he's about to do. And he started to sing and call in Ascended Masters. And I'm looking with one eye like, oh my gosh, who is Archangel Michael? Who is these people that he's saying? Is everybody else accepting this? And I'm like, okay, Brenda, be in your own head, be in your space, enjoy this. So I joined and enjoyed it. And he started to sing, and he started to use his voice to connect with the singing bowls. And it brought tears to my eyes. And of course, I was the first one up there. There was 50 people there. He's like, hey, you can talk to me more at my booth. Soon as he packed up, I waited, I walked around. I was like, okay, I need to talk to him by myself. He got crystals and he got this stuff from Egypt. Who is this guy? So that was about 5 years ago that I was introduced to him at the Addison Convention Center. They don't even do it there. They expanded so much. And so I
And by
got
the
on
way,
his,
for the listener, she's talking about Dr. Paul Hubbard. He was on the show recently, so if you haven't listened to that episode, go check it out.
yes. So, but Dr. Paul, I talked to him and he was telling me how he connects to the Hathars and how he connects and he allows himself to just be, a vessel to feel the energy through and just allow it to come out. And I was like, wow, this was so pure. And I kept on asking him, like, why was I crying? Like, he was like, well, you just needed to release. It wasn't no specific thing he could have told me. I just never experienced that before.
Mm-hmm.
And got on his email list and everything he'd come to Dallas, I would, take time to go and see him at his booth or see if he has another one of those that I was drawn to. And just about every time he was here, it was just like a treat for me, go Sundays and see him. And last year, I missed the date to go to Egypt. Well, the year before, 2021, when he went. And I was kicking myself in the butt a little bit. And I was like, Brenda, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you go? What made you? And I didn't really have no excuse. I just had work, and work. And I'm like, man, forget work. Like, I work too much. Like, I need to treat myself. So when it came down for real to 2022, I got into a space in a place where I was just like, you need to live. You need to let go. You need to have fun. And that's when he came to Dallas. And I was like, hey, I talked to you when you were driving I think he was driving to Austin. Oh, no, he was driving I forget where he was driving, but he was driving to Colorado or something and just got done with it. And he was texting me back and he was like, call me around this time and we can talk then. So I was talking to him on his drive. He was giving me a little more information. And so I knew he was going to be in Dallas. And I came and talked to him. I was like, I'm ready to make my payment. And he's like, oh, I was wondering what happened to you. And so I made my payment and it started the countdown, the countdown of going to Egypt to see what magnificent energy and things he's talking about. He just giving a little piece of it here and a little piece of there. And you might not hear the same story when he speaks, or you might hear the same story, but get more of that story. And each time I was around him, the information that he was putting out there, like he has this amazing crystal grid class that's basically a level 1 and level 2, one day, I believe, or 2 days. And I missed that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I really was drawn to it, but it slipped my mind and I didn't do it. And every time he was here for either a workshop or a course or an expo, I needed to be there. It was just something where I felt like he was my long lost brother. Like I felt like it was just a feeling of, and I'm still searching for the word, because usually when people
Mm-hmm.
talk about people, they talk about all in love and how much they love him. I love him to death, but it's more of a connection where it's like, Brenda, you're opening your third eye right now. You're working diligently on your third eye and your crown chakra. This is going to be the person who is going to give you all the downloads you need,
Mm.
and going to Egypt, I didn't know where we were going. I didn't know the itinerary. All I knew was that I had a plane ticket. I had somewhere to stay. Food was included. And I didn't have to plan anything. And it was the most blissful pilgrimage,
Yeah.
vacation, trip that still working on putting into words for me is, I don't know how to describe it. It's the most genuine feeling that all of us that was there together, 23, 26 people were going. It was like we knew each other and
Mm-hmm.
we just fit and we just connected and we laughed and we assisted and we hugged and we loved on each other, in a genuine light.
Mm-hmm.
And with Dr. Paul, hats off to him for taking the time to work on himself, to assist people, to teach, to have the patience for us. I took his sound healing level 1 and level 2 for holographic sound. He teaches us how to vocalize and use our throat, our voice, our
Yeah.
tone
Yeah.
to go through the chakras to heal. And the information that he has, it's very easy to read and understand and to do it once you know how he's doing it. But how he has his 4-day course, he like really sets you up and makes you practice and makes you practice again and sets you up again to go through the steps for you to understand, so you really don't miss it. It's not like, let me go ahead and buy some singing bowls and learn how to play this myself. This is a strategically healing journey where you assist people, like literally, and it works. It works. It's magnificent.
Mm-hmm.
And all the masters, all the Hathors, all the ascended masters, all working with our higher self to bring that energy and trust ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a singer. I don't just going around la 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 and singing. No, I'm like, yes, that don't sound good. Only do that in the shower of the car, Brenda. Nobody else needs to hear that. And it really, about day two, I was like, oh man. I'm like, okay, let's go ahead and use a voice. And I joke, and I started joking in a tone how he would teach us. And he looked at one of the girls that was with us, that Tressa, and they just laughed at each other. And it was like, okay, she's opening up. She's saying she's getting it. And I'm like, yeah, let's go and practice. And it was still some people even by day four, they were still very, very in their box.
Sure.
And I had to nudge somebody like, hey, you know what? We're here now. Like, we know each other, but at this point, like, open up. Like, remember, if you are assisting in healing somebody, you are healing yourself. Like, and that's the best gift that you can do for yourself. It's like literally that energy wheel, that holographic sound, that globe, that field that's around us is being circulated through the person or through the group and back to you. And that's a heavenly feeling. It really is.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's such an amazing class.
So amazing. And so had you what do you think it was about Egypt that drew you to Egypt?
You know, what drew me was the mystery, right, of
Uh-huh.
ancient civilization. It was a mystery of like, first of all, how are these pyramids really being built?
Mm-hmm.
Who got the answers? Let me go down there and see.
You're like,
And it
I'm on the
all
case. I
came
got to go investigate this for myself.
for real. I gotta
Totally.
see this. All these pictures. I'm going with a group, a person who's been going for 20 years. I couldn't be no safe, I couldn't be safer with going. And yeah, so I went. And what really drawn me to was just how it was so historic still after, I mean, thousands and thousands. I mean, I could really say millions at this point. It just goes on, just to how everything was so preserved, and the churches. And my nephew had called me about the year before, and I helped him with. He decided to write about the pyramids, the Giza pyramids, and he was so drawn to them, which made me a little more drawn to it.
Sure.
And and doing that research and talking to him and pulling stuff on the internet, and I had a book I didn't realize that had some topic in there about it, and just learning. And I was just like, man, these these pyramids are tombs. These pyramids not just have, it's a spiritual sacrifice and a belief system that works, that they do it when people die, and with the people that want to go with them, and the animals and the gold and everything, for them to go back into their chamber in the afterlife and have this stuff. And I was like, wow, that's such an honor. That's such a blessing. Or the father has a tomb, and then the brothers, and and they're all right next to each other. I'm like, man, that's a big support system there.
Uh-huh.
And doing that research with him really opened my mind more. And I think that's when I really was mad at myself. Now I'm thinking about it, where I was kicking myself down, like, man, why didn't I go this year? So I knew next year I needed to go. Yeah, that's what drew me. And
That's
we
awesome.
still figuring out how the pyramids were built, huh?
Yeah, you got any ideas there?
Sound. That's all I'm gonna say. I feel like it
Yeah.
was sound. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm actually wearing my Ankh necklace right now, and
Yes.
hell yeah.
I loved
Um,
yours. Actually, you picked a good one.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. No problem.
So, are you familiar with Matthias De Stefano?
No, can you tell me a little
He's got a show on Gaia
bit?
called Initiation.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. But he was born remembering all of his past lives, including lives in Atlantis and Egypt.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And one of the things he talks about on the show is that the Ankh was actually some type of sound, like some technological device that would play some sound frequency, and they would use Ankhs on either side of the blocks to like levitate the blocks
Mm,
with sound.
I I can see that happening because a lot of um the hieroglyphics that we see,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them they now I'm thinking about it, they mostly had the ankhs like in their hand, you know,
Good
and
point.
one hand to be up or one hand and be to the side, you know, of giving that energy in a sense of what we call Reiki now, you know, that type of
Mm-hmm.
modality. Um, but wow, that's interesting. I don't have Gaia because I don't really trust myself with living life and going to work. I feel like I will
Yeah.
be on there all the time. Like it's so many interesting things.
Yeah.
I need to finish. I need to do something and then treat myself with watching something. I'll be stuck to the TV forever. I just don't trust myself right now because
Yeah.
the information that they're putting out is like you know that it's real when you
Mm-hmm.
watch it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Totally.
can feel it, like you know that this is the truth, and we all want to know the truth about everything, right? We want to all remember who we are. We all want to remember our past lives and where what our past, present, and future is. You know, we all want to know that, and um, I feel like every time we go through something, even Egypt, we were in a mystery school,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the mystery school of ascending, you know, in that school and learning the information that we did there to really help us remember or assist our higher self to helping us remember. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's that cycle of like the temples we walked in, and some of them I was like, it feels familiar. Like
Yeah.
all I remember thinking about was the Isis temple was like, this feels familiar, but it didn't look like this. You know, like I
Mm.
remember like feeling that. And I was like with a couple of them too. And it was just like, oh wow. I know, or I go to one of the rooms that barely had nothing in it, and it's like I know something is underneath here, you know, or I can feel something is here. Like there's more here, you know, in this space than just this. So, Egypt is still unraveling a lot of stuff. There's a lot of dirt, there's a lot of sand, and I feel like a lot of stuff just needs to be dug up with a lot of care and a lot of love. So they're going to excavate, you know, the areas that they either have the money for or people come in and, you know, get the necessary tools and means and staff to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish I could just use my energy to just move all the dirt and rise everything up. I mean, that would be amazing. Wouldn't it
Mm-hmm.
be? Get a couple of ox and do that. Levitate it off the ground.
Someday soon, I believe it.
I know, right? Like we get all our powers back. We get all our energy back.
Yeah,
That would be awesome.
that would be awesome.
Uh-huh.
So, were there any places we went in Egypt or experiences you had there, Jordan, that were like particularly meaningful for you?
Hmm. Jordan, we seen a lot, but we really didn't see much, right?
Uh-huh.
So going to the Dead Sea and for it not to be on the itinerary, um, was nice to be in that water and float. Um, and then as I started to dig inside the Dead Sea, picking up the actual salt, like that looks like little crystals.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another place in Egypt was the fact that we went to go see the treasury in the monastery,
That was awesome.
and that was that walk was everything for me. That was like I was happy that we did that at the end. Like I know that a lot of people didn't like the walk because it was either too much, but we did about 10 miles in that walk, and it just did a great release for me, like for my body, just for my mind to be clear. To walk around and see, you know, the donkeys and the camels and the people in the shops and you know the cave, you know, just everything. And it was a hot day, but it wasn't too hot. Like it did get a little hot at one point.
Right.
And then once you got to the end, it was just like 5 more minutes to get to the top, you know, and us walking together, that was pretty nice. Us talking
Mm-hmm.
more. And at that point, I was in my head and focusing on like an intention that I wanted to feel from the energy. When you start joining me, when we started walking, like that was great. And we stopped a couple places, and just seeing the little shops and how people, and just how it was decorated too. They didn't need much, but the rug, the coverage, and then their trinkets, to sell, to people. And or they might have the smoothies or their sandwiches or whatever it is. And it was nice. But once we walked that 5 more minutes to the top and just seeing down, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That was, I even felt myself like still you was walking down before me, and I felt myself just like still feeling like I'm high in a sense of just floating and walking down. And I just felt like my legs were jello, and I was like, wait, are my legs tired from walking so much? And I was like, nah, no, I still got a little more in me. But it was just like that being so high where we can see everything and coming down was just like, now I can take a break. Now I can rest for a minute and then end up walking back, So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. Did you get to ride one of the donkeys there?
Not there, but I did ride one for a minute at Sakara.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you took some amazing pictures. You did show me.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I was gonna do the camel when we were at the pyramids, but that was the day I had food poisoning, so I was like not feeling great.
Yeah, I don't think I would have got up on a camel not feeling good because that camel would have got all of that. Camel would have got all of that. Yeah, no. But we stopped we did something that morning, and then we walked around, took some pictures by the Giza pyramids, and then the Sphinx is not too far from that as well. So that's where I did the camel ride from the Giza to the Sphinx. And they only had one sternum on on the camels, and that never, like, not having two to balance myself, and then realizing that I am on like these camel humps, like I couldn't get comfortable. So every time that it walked like it had high heels on. And I'm like, oh, okay, Brenda, don't play, don't take no pictures, don't do no videos. It was just like, oh shoot, are we going down now? Like, it took me to a point where I was just like, okay, enjoy. Even though it was short, it was about, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, camera ride. It still was pretty nice to do it. So that's about the one that I did.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember when we did the sunset at the Isis pyramid and we just watched it rise, and then we took that boat back going into the Nubian. That was one of my favorites too, because being in the Isis temple with all the cats that was there, I don't know if you really paid attention. That guy had like 30 cats there. And I started to see as we were in the water of how that temple was underwater for so long, because on the outside it was at least risen. I don't know how deep it goes into the water, but at least 8-10 feet above water that I can see that it was, and feeling that fresh air and those kids coming on the side and singing, and the Nubian guy singing as well. That was pretty
Awesome.
nice, and that energy just felt really clear over there too.
Yeah.
Did you do the balloon ride?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. So yeah, the balloon ride. Oh my, that was my first balloon ride ever.
Mine too.
That was a beautiful day that we went as well. And at the guy, he showed us so much of how he was maneuvering, the hot air balloon, and how he was turning us, and how you just felt, kind of safe with them being so high, and just pointing out different things and showing them. I felt myself just being so happy and filled with gratitude. I started to cry. I was like, this is so beautiful. Oh my gosh. Like, we're in Egypt. We're in Africa. In this hot air balloon, seeing everything for above. And once we went on different tours, we started to see places we went before, like the Luxor. I forget the name where we did, that was probably our first sunset, where we were watching, where we had to walk up. We had the golf cart, and we walked around, and we walked up into the temple.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
It was that day.
Yeah. That was
Hatshepsut temple. Yeah. Hot chicken soup.
Hot chicken soup.
That's why I see why people remember it, because I couldn't remember. Yep, that's where it was. That was a beautiful place too. That was a beautiful place.
Yeah. It was all just so stunning. Just so much history, so much mystery. You're right. It's just unbelievable.
It really was unbelievable. He has a Dr. Paul has a trip in April. Are you going?
No, but I am going to go Beckley Tepe in May.
Oh, yes. I'm
Yeah.
so happy for you.
Thank
Wow.
you.
You're welcome. Are you going with friends or?
No, it's actually I think kind of similar trip. It's hosted by some of the folks who are on Gaia's Ancient Civilization show.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
Wow. Yeah. See, you got me wanting to download the app like right now.
Yeah. It's so funny you say that though, because like when I first got a subscription, yeah, I was binging it for like months straight. It's crazy, and they've got so much content.
Yes, I seen the content. That's
Mhm.
why I'm like, I don't trust myself right now. Let me get through a couple of these projects, and then maybe I'll take a little bit off because if I'm working and I'm watching TV and I gotta get up, I mean, I'm gonna be so tired,
Yeah.
doing it to myself again through the day. And if I don't sleep, I'm not a happy person. So I
Mhm.
don't even want to, I don't even want to do that. But the information, I know everybody keeps on telling me now, like, forget Netflix, forget Hulu. It's all about Gaia at this
Uh-huh.
point.
Uh-huh.
Like literally. So I'm gonna break down and get it, but I'm going to have to cancel a couple of subscriptions so I could just have one and not focus on anything else. If it's not
That makes
on
sense.
Gaia, then I don't need to be a part of it because I probably have at least 7 subscriptions like Disney and HBO and Stars. Gotta
Yeah.
realize what am I really having these for.
Right. I agree. And what I've kind of I don't know, come to see with a lot of the mainstream media and entertainment companies is just all the gratuitous violence and sex that they throw into everything. And you're
Hmm.
just like, why?
Yeah, or it gets a little like uh not of the light scenes, and you're like, oh yeah, that took a turn. I don't even want to watch this anymore. Like,
Exactly.
no, that came from left field with that. Okay, that okay, and you because now when you're awakened, you start to break down everything, right? And you already know what they're really telling you
Yeah.
in the episode or the series, and it's like, so yeah, that's why I said I wouldn't be able to because once you're exposed and activated to that, just no going back.
Huge. Yeah, it's so funny you say that. Like, so the original Game of Thrones, right, was like my favorite show of all time. And then I was watching the new show House of Dragon, and like the season finale, right? And this is I think right after Roe v. Wade gets overruled. She like the main character, the main woman, has like this really disgustingly graphic like aborted birth, and they show it all, and it's just like bloody and graphic, and I'm like, all right, I'm out. Like that's it for me.
Like her whole private parts?
Not that, but they showed the
Oh,
dead baby, and you're like, this is the season finale of what's probably the highest rated show on TV right now, right? Like, why is this an image that we're
wow.
choosing to throw in front of everyone's face?
Yeah, that would have been very disturbing to me.
Mhm.
I got into Game of Thrones. Who's he gonna laugh at me? Probably season 6 or 5. I wasn't a person who watched it all the time. It was a friend
Mhm.
who I did a couple of events with, and she was like, "Do you watch a Game of Thrones?" And I was like, "No, but I got a Fire Stick." And then I don't know, every Saturday she'd come over and we'd catch up and watch. And that's how I got into it. And so from there, I was hooked. And then it ended not so great. And then we have the House of Dragons, and I watched maybe 1 or 2 episodes, but I keep falling asleep on it. So I'm like, it's not my time to watch it right now. So, but I hear you. It's the scenes and the messages that they throw in there is like, I don't know about you, but it's disturbing to me to where I don't feel comfortable to even supporting or watching it anymore once it's exposed. And you're like, um, when the whole I don't even know if I can say this, but the whole scandal with the huge fashion
Oh,
company, which
Balenciaga.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they I started to see something that I was watching was promoting that in the show. And I was like, yeah, yeah, it's everywhere. And I started seeing it, even if it wasn't funny. funny things. It was just like, whoa, this is interesting. So maybe that's the conversation I needed to have with you, so I can just cancel everything right now and go ahead and put Gaia, on the phones and on the TVs. I think you've convinced me.
I love it. I love it. Well, glad that made a difference today. Busting the
You're the
oligarchy
best.
$1 at a time, right?
Yeah. Oh man, that's awesome.
Well, Brenda, this has been so much fun catching up. So for folks who want to learn more about Now and Zen Bodyworks, where should they go to learn more?
Oh, learn where should you guys go? Where is the best thing to go? I mean, you can go to the website www.nowinsandbodyworks.com, or you can go to my social media nowinsandbodyworks.com. I look forward to meeting and seeing everybody. Feel free to reach out, DM me or Jordan, and let us know what you think about the show. Leave a comment, subscribe, all the fun stuff.
I love it. And also, we forgot to talk about your book that's coming out.
Oh my gosh, I started to write a book this January. I didn't know I was going to write a book, but I woke up and my ancestor said, "You need to write a book." And I
Uh-huh.
said, "Write a book? Really? Me write a book? I'm great at math. I'm not great at English. I'm the person who's writing stuff and putting fragment sentences and missing the dots and the commas. Like, I'm that person. I'm that person using there, they are. I'm all wrong. You mad at me. Like, I'm that person posting something misspelling stuff." And once I sat down with it and I said, well, where do I start? And I started a little bit about my childhood, running track and going and started my massage career during the recession. So it's going to be on Amazon. It's still at the last process of proofreading and make sure that there's no misspelled words, no fragments, that it looks and sounds good to the people that actually enjoy reading and can pick stuff up very easily. And Amazon next month. That's where we're at. I'll also be doing a event in New York for anybody who is in New York. February 16th, I'll be speaking at an event about lymphatic massages in my book and everything like that. It'll be super fun. And
Awesome.
then,
New York City?
yeah, New York City Times Square at the W.
Uh-huh.
Yep. So that's gonna be fun. I haven't been to New York in a while, and I'm speaking at an event and just utilizing my voice,
Yeah.
utilizing my words, letting people know what I do and be seen. That's where I'm at in life.
I love
Like
it.
allowing my light to shine bright, so divinely bright, you know, a bright sun ray, a bright sunshine, sunlight so bright.
I love it. I mean, and to our discussion about, the images that are being portrayed in the media, right? I think we need more people like you shining light, shining bright, and letting people see that there is good and beauty and light and love in the world, right? That it doesn't all have to be these images of, death and destruction and all of that.
Yeah, a lot of chaos out there, but it's kind of like the same thing we talked about earlier about the food. Not only do they use the foods or lotion or toothpaste or water, they do the same thing of our phones, our social media, and our commercials and things that we watch. It's the control thing of them always wanting to embed it in us and think that this is what normal is. But as we expose ourselves to different things and our third eye awakens, we know that it doesn't look right and it doesn't feel right and it doesn't have to be like that.
It
So I
doesn't have to be
appreciate
like
you.
that.
Mm-mm. I appreciate you shining your light so bright and saying that, gosh darn, I'm going to go ahead and create a podcast and asking me to be in your podcast and just to be able to talk to you. Talk and text here and there, but
Yeah.
to have a conversation with you and be so genuine. I appreciate you so much for allowing my light to shine bright through your light.
Well, Brenda, I love you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I've had so much fun chatting with you.
Yes, I love you too, Jordan.
All right. Have a great evening. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. In this discussion, Brenda and I talked about our trip to Egypt and what had attracted us to the country. The mystery, the magic, the hidden knowledge. Here are 5 of my favorite mysteries about Egypt and theories I'm currently considering for each. Mystery number 1. How old is the Sphinx? The field of Egyptology was thrown for a loop when, in 1991, 2 researchers posed compelling evidence that challenged the accepted answer to this exact question. John Anthony West, an independent scholar unknown to professional Egyptologists, and Dr. Robert Schoch, a tenured geologist at Boston University, argued that part of the Sphinx enclosure showed clear signs of rainwater erosion. This was distinct from the rest of the Sphinx, which showed wind erosion. To the chagrin of the incredulous Egyptology and archaeology communities, the story was picked up and received widespread media coverage. To make matters worse for the existing paradigm, 2 years later, NBC published a documentary by West titled Mystery of the Sphinx, which was seen by millions of Americans. Why is evidence of rainwater erosion on the Sphinx so important for our understanding of its history? And why was it so threatening to the accepted narrative of archaeology? Here's Charlton Heston, the narrator of that documentary, explaining why.
The Great Sphinx of Egypt, keeper of the ancient mysteries, guardian of the ancient secrets. The Sphinx is considered to be the greatest statue on Earth. Good evening. I'm Charlton Heston. Every 100 years or so, an idea comes along that can shake the world. An idea so revolutionary that at first no one believes it could be true. When Galileo showed evidence that the Earth moved around the sun, the authorities arrested him. Many people refused to believe that the Wright brothers could fly, even after they'd been doing it for 2 years. But eventually, if the evidence is convincing, a theory can be accepted as common knowledge. What you're about to see could be history in the making. Tonight, we go to Egypt to examine the controversial theories of John Anthony West. West and his team of scientists challenge our long-held views about the origins of the Great Sphinx. They suggest that the Sphinx was carved before Egypt became a desert, 9,000 to 10,000 years ago. It's remarkable that for thousands of years, the evidence has been in plain sight, yet till now, no one has recognized its significance. If West's theories prove to be correct, the implications are staggering. We've been taught that the people who inhabited Egypt during that early period were primitives who survived by hunting and scavenging for food. John West believes that this view is incomplete. He feels that an entire chapter of man's early history is missing. West's team has uncovered new evidence which suggests that we're descendants of an unknown earlier civilization, an advanced culture capable of incredible technological feats. Tonight we'll examine this evidence to see if man's early history needs to be rewritten. Could the legends of Atlantis be true? Egypt, land of mystery. The symbol of her enigmatic culture, the Great Sphinx. For thousands of years, travelers have visited Egypt and stood in awe of these great monuments. Of all ancient civilizations, none has left behind such a wealth of artistic and architectural mastery. These magnificent temples were the inspiration for the artists of ancient Greece and Rome, who in turn passed their knowledge on to us. But who inspired the Egyptians in the first place? History has no answer. On the easternmost boundary of the Sahara Desert, 6 miles west of Old Cairo, the Sphinx and surrounding pyramids rest on the edge of the Giza Plateau. 240 feet long, the length of a city block. 60 feet high, the height of a 6-story building. The Sphinx has the body of a lion and the head of a man. It was carved in one piece out of solid limestone bedrock. It rests in its own enclosure. facing east to catch the first rays of the rising sun. Egyptologists who specialize in ancient Egyptian dynasties now believe that the Sphinx was carved by the pharaoh Chephren in his own image 4,500 years ago. Chephren is the pharaoh who is credited with building the second of the three major pyramids in the Giza Plateau during what's known as the Old Kingdom period. For over half its known life, the Sphinx has been buried up to its neck in sand. Despite this protection from the elements, the body of the Sphinx is deeply eroded. Although it's been dug out and repaired many times, nothing has ever been found to tell us who built the Sphinx or when. This is John Anthony West, author and independent Egyptologist. While researching the work of French mathematician Schwaller de Lubitsch, he made a chance discovery that would change his life. Schwaller made the simple observation that the Sphinx had been eroded by water, not by wind and sand, as traditionally believed. These are two very different types of erosion. Water in the Sahara Desert. There's been no significant rainfall in the Sahara for 9,000 to 10,000 years. West was the first person to grasp the implications of this. If the Sphinx was eroded by water, it had to be at least 9,000 years old. The deep erosion is easy to see, but it takes an expert to identify its cause.
Through some friends, I had an introduction to a very well-known Oxford geologist, and I went into him with a very simple question. On the basis of a clear photograph alone, could he, as a geologist, tell the difference between weathering by water and weathering by wind and sand? The answer was cautiously expressed as a general rule, yes. I asked him if he didn't mind if I play a bit of a trick on him, and what I did was I took a photograph of the Sphinx and I masked off the head and the paws, and I asked him what did he think that was responsible for that weathering. And he looked at it a moment and said, well, unquestionably, water. And then I stripped the masking tape off, and he looked at it a minute, and he said, oh.
While the geological community was fascinated by Schock and West's research, those in archaeology and Egyptology were less pleased with these revelations. Why would they be so resistant to considering a well-researched, albeit unconventional theory is a discussion for another time? But here is the irreverent West describing the fallout that ensued.
So then we broke this news because now I had Schock behind me, to the GSA, that's Geological Society of America's annual meeting in San Diego. This was 91, that's 25 years ago. And that's you might say it's the Super Bowl of geology. Anybody with anything new or anything good or challenging to say presents it at the GSA. And Schock and I spent a whole afternoon at my place trying to make this sound boring so we didn't scare them away. But they still understood that there was the possibility of news through this. And sure enough, we were the hit of the show. I mean, with the New York Times and all the scientific magazines.
I remember the massive coverage.
Yeah, I mean, we hadn't even met then yet,
yeah,
but yeah, it was
Sphinx
huge
could be
coverage.
much older than experts say.
That's right, and
that really pissed the Egyptologists off.
Oh, they were furious about this. And in fact, this is where we come to in the story, the science editor of the Boston Globe, Schock teaches at Boston University, interviewed us by telephone. He wasn't there personally. First he interviewed Schock, and Schock was his usual polite academic self who explained carefully what it was and why they were that angry. And then he interviewed me, and he said, well, the geologists are all in favor of this. What gets them so furious? Because you can't imagine what the things that they were calling us. And I said, well, look, this is about the weathering patterns in rocks. And when it comes to the weathering patterns in rocks, the opinions of Egyptologists and archaeologists is no more valid than the opinions of proctologists. And he published this, and in the Boston Globe. And this did not have the conciliatory effect upon the archaeology department of Boston University. And there was a furious character assassination of Schock. It was really awful by this woman who doesn't know that we're coming at her pretty quickly. And she wrote this scandalous character assassination of Schock. And I said, Schock, you can't let him get away with that. This is, okay, it's an in-house Boston BU paper, but still, you can't let it get away with it. Oh, no, he said, let it slide, it'll pass. I said, well, you do mind if I write her? And so she said, no, you go ahead, long as it's just from you and not from the university. So I did, and I said, I understand you guys took umbrage at this comparison of Egyptologists and archaeologists to proctologists. And I said, I've got to tell you that the proctologists didn't like it either. They said their job was to cure sick assholes. They didn't like being compared to them.
West spent the next several decades continuing his research on ancient Egypt and helping connect its mysteries to the public. He passed away in 2018, but his decades of research helped to inspire other researchers like Graham Hancock to re-examine the official story of antiquity. The deeper they've looked, the more incredible their findings. So just how old is the Sphinx exactly? I'll return to this question again, but here are some initial thoughts from Dr. Schock and Mr. West.
Many archaeologists and Egyptologists have been highly resistant to my ideas. If my findings are in conflict with their theories, maybe it's time for them to reevaluate their theories about the rise of civilization. I'm not saying that the Sphinx was built by Atlanteans or people from Mars or extraterrestrials. I'm just following the science where it leads me, and that leads me to conclude that the Sphinx was built much earlier than previously thought.
Schock and I have a friendly debate going about the age of the Sphinx. Schock holds to his 5,000 to 7,000 BC date, mainly by taking the most conservative view allowed by the data to hand. I think for a variety of both intuitive and scholarly reasons that the date is much, much older. Schock isn't even in disagreement about this, but he prefers to take the most conservative view. I think that when and if our isotopic analysis and other areas that we're working in provide a date that, or provide data that we think is trustworthy, that date is going to be very, very old indeed. I think older than 10,000 BC, really older than 15,000 BC, and it wouldn't even surprise me if the date was a lot older than that. I really do believe that when we get a date, it's going to be something so staggering that nobody's going to believe the data.
Mystery number 2. How are the Giza monuments built? The megaliths constructed in the Sphinx enclosure and the Great Pyramids of Giza, how are they moved? Here again, the mainstream answer of mechanical leverage using ramps and pulleys doesn't hold up under scrutiny.
The ancient Egyptians were masters at building with large blocks of stone. Visitors from all around the world are still impressed by these magnificent structures built thousands of years ago. The Great Pyramid of Giza is perhaps the most famous example. 2.5 million blocks of limestone are stacked 480 feet high. The average weight of the blocks is 2.5 tons. The interior chambers are lined with blocks which weigh up to 70 tons each. As impressive as these numbers are, there's an even greater mystery, which until now has been completely overlooked. In order to expose the body of the Sphinx, enormous blocks of limestone were quarried out. Block by block, the stone was removed as the lion's shape took form.
I'm standing here on the walls of the Sphinx enclosure. This is a massive limestone temple that was built contemporaneously with the Sphinx. We know that because we can look at the rocks that this is made out of, and we see that it has exactly the same layers, exactly the same lithology. In fact, we can determine that these blocks came right out of the Sphinx enclosure. They actually carved out massive blocks which they moved to in front of the Sphinx and reassembled as the Sphinx temple. And the size of these blocks really is enormous. How were they able to move these huge blocks with, quote, primitive technology? How were they able to assemble them into this temple? It really awes and inspires the imagination.
Some of these blocks measure 30 feet long, 10 feet high, and 12 feet wide. They each weigh 200 tons. That's roughly the weight of a diesel locomotive. Nowhere else in all of Egypt are blocks this size used in the construction of temple walls. The question is, how were these giant blocks moved onto the site, then raised and precisely fitted into position 50 feet above the ground? Egyptologists maintain that it was done with ramps, levers, ropes, and a lot of manpower. To put the problem in perspective, John went to a Long Island construction site to see how today's engineers lift and maneuver heavy loads. A crew of 20 men had been working for 6 weeks to prepare for the lift of one object, a 200-ton boiler. This crane is one of the largest land-based cranes in existence. Its boom reaches 220 feet into the air. A concrete counterweight of 160 tons is required to keep it from tipping over. A second crane was needed to precisely fit the boiler into place.
I'm looking at what you're showing me here, these pieces, and looking at the distance involved. I don't know if we would be able to pick if any of these are 200 tons from the position that I see available to us. I mean, I've looked at these over the years because in my business, when we pick heavy loads, we look to see how heavy loads were picked by other people before us. And seeing how they move these heavy blocks, 200-ton blocks, possibly thousands and thousands of years ago, I have no idea how they did this job. It's a mystery. It'll probably always be a mystery to me, and maybe to everybody.
If modern engineers have a problem maneuvering blocks of that size, how were the ancient builders able to do it? Was it possible to move 200-ton blocks into place using simple levers, as Egyptologists suggest? Or did they possess a technology that our science is only beginning to understand? A technology based on the vibrations of sound? Some of you may remember this famous commercial.
Can the amplified voice of Ella Fitzgerald shatter this glass? Believe it.
Clearly, sound can affect matter, but can it levitate a heavy object? The scientists at a space-age research facility outside of Chicago have a different definition of levitation.
Acoustic levitation is a non-magical way of floating an object in midair using very loud sound. The levitation that we do is done by having one or two sound sources and a reflector, and the sound bounces off the reflector, and on its way back down, the two sound fields pass through each other. In that region where there's the interference of those two sound fields, there are little wells that you can actually levitate small objects the size of a pea in. I'd love to go to Egypt, but lifting the block is a little beyond what we can do currently. The frequency required is much lower than we can produce at sufficient intensity, and the reflector that you'd have to have above the object would be approximately 1/4 of a mile across.
Today's most advanced science can levitate a small rock, but nothing that compares with the blocks in the Sphinx and Valley temples. The fact remains, these 200-ton blocks of stone were somehow raised and fitted together with great precision. No one today knows just how this was done.
While auditive or acoustic levitation was possibly involved in the movement of these massive stones, It is certainly not the only viable theory as to how these monuments were built. It's also important to remember that these were massive construction projects that have been reconstructed and rebuilt numerous times throughout the ages. Therefore, it's quite possible that different technologies were used at various points in time. Another option for the construction of the Giza monuments is telekinesis. As I've consistently argued, there is substantial evidence to suggest our universe is fundamentally consciousness-based and that matter itself is an illusion. This esoteric knowledge of consciousness was well known by the ancient Egyptians. It is therefore possible that they knew how to access latent psychic abilities, including telekinesis, precognition, telepathy, and past life regression. Abilities we in our current materialistic paradigm tend to relegate to the realm of the pseudoscientific and the impossible. Here's Hancock writing on this possibility in his latest book, America Before: The Key to Earth's Lost Civilization. In my view, the science of the lost civilization was primarily focused upon what we now call psi capabilities that deployed the enhanced and focused power of human consciousness to channel energies and manipulate matter. Although psi research is still undertaken at a small number of universities and institutes in Britain, the United States, and Russia, it is generally ridiculed and sidelined by modern mainstream scientists. This categorically does not mean that there's nothing to psi, but instead speaks volumes about the nature of science today, which is heavily dominated by materialist thinkers whose reference frame has little room for spooky action at a distance. The phrase, which was Einstein's, refers specifically to the paradoxes of quantum entanglement, but applies equally well to other alleged non-local phenomena such as telepathy, communication from one person to another of thoughts, feelings, desires, etc., involving mechanisms that cannot be understood in terms of known scientific laws. Remote viewing, the practice of seeking impressions about a distant or unseen target, purportedly using extrasensory perception. Telekinesis, the movement of a body caused by thought or willpower without the application of physical force, and healing powers, whereby patients are successfully cured of their ailments by non-physical and non-medicinal means. Mystery number 3. What is under the Sphinx's left paw? When West and Schock had the opportunity to do seismographic testing to check for anything buried under the Sphinx, they found some interesting discoveries.
Archaeological excavation is expensive, and permission to dig in Egypt is difficult to obtain. How could West and his team look beneath the sand without digging? The seismograph is connected to listening devices called geophones, which are placed in the ground at precise intervals. A metal plate is hit with a heavy hammer, sending shock waves deep into the ground. These shock waves reflect off the rock layers of different densities. They're received by the geophones and then recorded by the seismograph. The final results give a graphic representation of what lies hidden beneath the surface. Dr. Thomas Dobecki has been a professor at the Colorado School of Mines, and he's worked extensively in the petroleum industry. He's a professional engineering geologist and geophysicist. His specialty is high-resolution seismography.
Initially, our primary purpose for conducting the seismic surveys in and around the Sphinx was to look for buried evidence for ancient civilizations. To this end, we were able to locate unusual cavities that could be chambers within the Sphinx enclosure. But over and above this, we were also able to map the pattern of weathering depth within the limestone.
Here's West on the Joe Rogan Experience discussing the seismographic analysis over 25 years later.
So what you hit that thing and it makes a sound, and
yeah,
the sound
it's a seismograph. The sound goes into the earth.
Interesting.
The next slide is what we found, and there it is. See, A. That is a cavern or a chamber or of some sort. It's a void underneath the bedrock, and that's the so-called Hall of Records. People think that that's Edgar Cayce is talking about. We're iffy about it. Other than that, the seismograph does not know how to channel. So it just says what's there. And
so it knows there's a void.
It knows there's a void. And at the very back, it's a little bit, see, it's the edge of the sea. See, at the very end, by the rump, that is also a chamber. And that's absolutely, it's known that it's there. And this gives you the same profile seismologically.
But there's no known way to get into these things?
Yeah, the back one, there's a way. It's a very rough-cut chamber. And there's just behind there, one of those stones, if you pull it away, and you can get in. And it's a room... rough, it's very rough, but about the size of the room that we're in here, the studio. And that's a room. So if that's a room, then it stands to reason that seismographical reason anyway, that A is also a cavern or a grotto or a construction or something.
So what we're looking at with A, when you see all those circles around it and the rough shape of it, that's the shape that they believe the room is. So it would be similar to the one that's at the rump, where it would be like kind of a
Sort
rough
of.
room.
Well, the seismographic, those are the, I forget, topo lines or something that give you the depths that the thing is at.
But it's not like a square 90-degree angle
well,
cut.
It's roughly rectangular, says Tom Dobecki, who is our geophysicist who was doing that work.
So what's the holdup as far as examining that?
Well, two. One, they don't want to be wrong. Two, that it's very difficult to do. It's under about 15 feet of bedrock, that cavern. The Sphinx is, probably the most, let's say, the archaeological hotspot of the universe. I mean, nothing is more open to, excitement and all the rest of it as the Sphinx. Secondly, the water level has risen so that whole chamber is probably filled with water now. So anything that isn't stone would have been obliterated long ago.
Imagine if you got down there and you found wet scrolls.
Well, maybe, or stone something or another.
Right.
But in theory, you could put a little fiber optic something down there and study it. But they don't want to be wrong about this. And anything invasive, the Sphinx is really in disastrous condition. So any little vibration or something like that could conceivably damage it. I don't worry about these things. The geology is much more important as far as I'm concerned. And my guess is that when we finally break open the portcullis and capture all of the quackademics that it protects at the moment, at that point when it is accepted, and these things do happen, this is this idea whose time has come. When it has come, things change, and at that point, maybe then the funding shows up, and the determination comes up to actually look into that void or chamber and see if it is indeed a void or chamber and if there's something in there.
When West mentions Edgar Cayce, the Hall of Records, and channeling, he's referring to the American psychic who lived from 1877 to 1945. Cayce, also known as the Sleeping Prophet, claimed to be a clairvoyant who could channel past lives while in a trance-like state. His work has been documented in over 14,000 readings. In 1932, Cayce prophesied that a secret chamber beneath the Sphinx containing an ancient Hall of Records would be discovered sometime around the year 2000. Not surprisingly, Cayce has been ridiculed and dismissed by mainstream Egyptologists, archaeologists, and materialists. He made astounding claims, including that an Atlantean flying vehicle is buried under the Sphinx and was used to build the Great Pyramid, as well as travel underground tunnels to habitate areas of inner Earth. I certainly don't claim to vouch for the accuracy of any of his prophecies and can understand if the listener dismisses his ideas entirely. Nevertheless, it is an interesting coincidence what West and Schock's research turned up in the 90s, and as West noted, seismographs don't know how to channel. So what could be in the Hall of Records? Here's Graham Hancock's perspective.
We think that all the indications suggest that a time capsule was deliberately concealed at Giza in Egypt with the intention that it should be found one day, a time capsule that would abolish all ambiguity over this matter and make it absolutely certain of what had gone before and of what we have forgotten, but a time capsule that was not intended to be found by barbarians, that was hidden away very carefully, to be found, as the ancient texts say, by the fully worthy. Perhaps that's who we are. Perhaps that time has come. Perhaps that's the decision and the awe-inspiring prospect that we confront in the near future.
Mystery number 4. Who built the Giza monuments? This question inevitably brings us back to our first mystery. When were the Giza monuments built? Mainstream archaeology and Egyptology claim the Sphinx was carved around 2600 to 2500 BC to represent the dynastic pharaoh Chephren, also known as Khafre, who is said to have built the second Great Pyramid of Giza as well. The Great Pyramid, meanwhile, is said to have been built by Khafre's father, Pharaoh Khufu, as his tomb. However, this dating of the original construction of the dynastic period does not hold up under scrutiny. the water erosion on the Sphinx enclosure being just the start of the discrepancies. Dynastic Egypt lasted from about 3000 BC until 300 BC, when Egypt was conquered by Alexander the Great. One curiosity of the dynastic period is that the architectural and technological capabilities of these ancient Egyptians appeared to have declined throughout the 2700-year period. If civilizations develop linearly and innovation compounds, wouldn't we expect the opposite? Independent researchers increasingly conclude that these structures weren't built by Khufu and Khafre, but rather restored by them, and that the original builders of these megalithic monuments came from a far more ancient civilization. But just how ancient? Edgar Cayce prophesies that the Sphinx was built around 10,500 BC. Graham Hancock and Robert Bauval independently arrived at this same dating, but for entirely different reasons. Bauval's Orion correlation theory dated the Sphinx's construction based on archaeastronomical alignments. This dating represents an important period of Earth's history for two reasons. A, 10,500 BC took place during the most recent age of Leo, and B, 10,500 BC was smack dab in the middle of the Younger Dryas period. The Age of Leo. Every approximately 26,000 years, the Earth cycles through what is known as the Great Year, or the precession of the equinox. The Earth wobbles at a slight tilt like a top, 23.43 degrees to be precise. Because of this wobble, the position of the sun on the first day of spring, the vernal equinox, slowly shifts westward around the sky. The sun's position cycles through 12 constellations, the zodiacal constellations. The sun is located within each constellation for a period of about 2,150 years, and we are currently in an age of Aquarius. The most recent age of Leo took place around 10,500 to 8,000 BC. Here's Hancock explaining why the age of Leo is significant for the dating of the Sphinx.
The ancient Egyptians were an astronomical civilization. Their focus was on the heavens. And I believe that the first time Zep Tepi can be defined astronomically. And there's a very specific moment. It's not exactly a moment, it's more an epoch of about 1,000 plus years, when at dawn on the spring equinox, the lion Sphinx would have gazed directly at its own celestial counterpart, the constellation of Leo. In the sky of around 10,500 BC, the Sphinx would have gazed directly at the constellation of Leo at dawn on the spring equinox. And then as the sun rose, something else happens. We see the constellation of Orion crossing the meridian due south of the pyramids. And the three belt stars of Orion are in the same pattern as the pyramids on the ground. And this is where I need to pay tribute to the amazing work of my great friend and colleague Robert Bauval, who is the originator of the Orion correlation theory. I just want to be clear that this is a kind of image of the first time. This is how it looked, how it's defined astronomically.
The Younger Dryas period. Around 10,835 BC, planet Earth underwent an incredible amount of change. After thousands of years of rising temperatures during the last ice age, something dramatic happened. Global temperatures, as we now know from Greenland ice core samples, dropped dramatically for a period of about 1,200 years. A growing coalition of scientists supports the theory that this massive temperature shift was triggered by a cosmic impact, the Younger Dryas impact theory, although this theory remains hotly contested by mainstream archaeology. At the end of this period, a subsequent event, Meltwater Pulse 1b, triggered a dramatic rise in temperatures, kicking off our present Holocene epoch. The Earth experienced heavy rainfalls globally during the first several thousand years of the Holocene during the Age of Cancer from about 8,000 to 6,000 BC. West, Schock, and Hancock have proposed the Sphinx's water erosion occurred during this Age of Cancer. Whatever triggered the Younger Dryas, its impacts were absolutely devastating. 3 isolated northern hemisphere glaciers were destabilized, 3/4 of megafaunal mammals became extinct, and the Clovis population of North America underwent a dramatic population decline. The ice sheet destabilization resulted in global flooding that could have hypothetically wiped out a seafaring, island-based civilization whose land was now underwater. Cultures all around the globe have myths related to a great flood that wiped out most of humanity. Could these stories be grounded in a true event that occurred at the beginning of the Younger Dryas period? While the astronomical alignment with Leo supports the 10,500 BC dating of the Sphinx, the fact that this also occurred in the middle of the Younger Dryas period is less clear-cut. The Younger Dryas was clearly a critical point in the history of humanity. However, does it make sense that a few survivors of a pre-Diluvian civilization living in this hostile environment would dedicate the time and resources to build these massive structures? Could they have built the Giza monuments at the beginning of the Age of Leo in anticipation of the coming impact event? Could the monuments have already been there, but the survivors managed to fill the Hall of Records during this hostile Younger Dryas period? Were the survivors of this pre-Diluvian civilization able to travel the globe, transferring what remained of their knowledge to the surviving hunter-gatherers after the Earth's climate recovered from turmoil? And if the Sphinx and Giza pyramids are older than even 10,500 BC, how much older could they be?
I remember we've had conversations about the Sphinx many times, and I know that you are open to the possibility that the Sphinx is even much older.
Much older, yeah, I'm convinced of it.
I think you're persuaded by the astronomical argument, but you make the point that the Age of Leo recurs every 26,000 years.
Yeah. And the Egyptian texts themselves, the Palermo stone and the Turin papyrus, that talk about these earlier periods and give the regnal years of these supposedly mythical kings. And when you put them all together, which is what Schroller did, you get 36,000 years, so we're closing in on an earlier Age of Leo.
Here's a team of researchers from the Gaia show Ancient Civilizations discussing this possibility of a much older Sphinx.
In ancient Egypt, every temple, in theory, had what were known as foundation texts or building texts. And what these were is how the first ever temple in Egypt was established. And there was always a story that went with it to do with the beginnings of Egyptian civilization and the age of the gods, which was known as Zep Tepi, which is generally interpreted as meaning the first time or the first occasion. And the most complete form of this foundation story is found at Edfu in southern Egypt. We would only know about it for the work of Yves Raymond, who wrote an extraordinary book called The Mythical Origin of the Egyptian Temple. And it's the only book to date that breaks down all of these foundation texts and shows that they're actually based on a real history of Egypt during what she describes as pre-dynastic times.
Now, observing the astronomical map at 10,500 before Christ, I noted a key point. The Orion constellation is not perfectly aligned with the pyramids. If we assume that the Zep Tepi is an ancient time during which the gods lived on Earth, we must also say that on the Giza Plateau somewhere there is a monument that refers to the star Sirius, in connection with the goddess Isis.
So initially, when Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock were discussing the origin of the Sphinx, they proposed a date that seemed fairly reasonable, around 10,500 BC. But then along comes West, and he's looking at the conditions of the Earth at that time. Things were in upheaval. There's a lot of turmoil. There's some environmental disasters going on. When you look at the structures of the Giza Plateau, it looks like they had a very stable and solid civilization, that there was no upheaval or turmoil going on. So he proposed, when he looked even further back in time, that maybe the Sphinx was denoting a previous age of Leo, way back in the precessional cycle at 36,000 BC.
And then as eons passed, we come across many different calamities hitting the Earth, especially the Younger Dryas period. And this is where we come into seeing the big water erosion all over the Sphinx and across the Giza Plateau, suggesting that these structures were already in place during the Younger Dryas and received a massive amount of erosion during that period.
Now, observing the Bauval's astronomical map, Sirius is under the horizon line, and it is not visible from Giza. but in the alignment at 36,000 before Christ, Cyrus is above the horizon line and perfectly visible from Giza. And the perfect alignment dates back at 36,400 before Christ, when the pyramids were aligned with the Orion's belt. I achieved the result focusing the precessional cycle of equinox and following the Boval's model of investigation. But using modern technical devices, I discovered some interesting clues that led me to the new starting point, which is the astronomical configuration at 36,400 before Christ.
When we look at the dating of 36,000 BC, that matches the Egyptian Kings List, the Papyrus List, all of these documents that suggest that the Sphinx was built 26,000 years prior to the original suggestion. Now, if that were to be the case, we would have lost a lot of the artifacts, we would have lost a lot of the structures, and that is actually also indication that maybe, just maybe, West was absolutely correct, that the original time of the Sphinx and the original time of Zep Tepi was not 10,500, but closer to 36,000 BC.
Here is one possible explanation for what happened. Let's say there was at least one advanced pre-flood civilization which we'll call Atlantis. Let's further assume Atlantis existed from at least 36,400 BC until the Younger Dryas impact event around 10,835 BC. These Atlanteans could have built the Sphinx and Giza pyramids during the Age of Leo around 36,400 BC. During the subsequent Age of Leo, which occurred in the Younger Dryas, these Atlanteans could have restored the Giza monuments and filled the Hall of Records either immediately before the Younger Dryas impact event or sometime during the period. Most of these Atlanteans would have perished from the ecological fallout of the Younger Dryas impact, but some survived, perhaps by moving underground or off-planet. After the climate settled, these survivors traveled Earth to transfer their knowledge to the surviving hunter-gatherers. This transfer of knowledge of agriculture, geometry, architecture, astronomy, and cosmology to places like Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley represents what we today incorrectly consider the start of civilization. Instead, this was the reignition of civilization. In Egypt, this transfer of knowledge was most pronounced at the beginning of the dynastic age around 3000 BC. However, as the years passed on, the depth of this Atlantean knowledge was gradually lost to the sands of time. That's a big story I've proposed, and I'm certain that I haven't nailed the details. The mere mention of Atlantis is enough to arouse derision and dismissiveness from archaeologists. Yet here again, the archaeological, mythological, and geological records support the idea that an advanced civilization could have actually existed before the Great Flood. For example, the first written record of Atlantis comes from Plato's dialogue Timaeus and Critias. Timaeus and Critias was written around 360 BC. In this dialogue, Plato recounts a story passed down through generations to Critias. Critias' ancestor Solon visited Egypt in the 6th century BC on a diplomatic voyage. This trip has been documented by other ancient Greek sources as well. On this trip, Solon learned from Egyptian priests about the founding of Athens following the most recent deluge and about the civilizations that existed before the flood. Solon learned from the Egyptian priests that Athens had been rebuilt 9,000 years earlier. 9,000 years before 6th century BC matches the end of the Younger Dryas period perfectly. Critias starts the story by telling Socrates, "You're about to hear a story which, for all its strangeness, is absolutely true." Socrates later notes, "The fact that this isn't a made-up story, but a true historical account is, of course, critically important." The Egyptian priests further told Solon that the human race has often been destroyed in various ways, as it will be in the future too. Though there have been countless causes of briefer disasters, fire and water have been responsible for the most devastating catastrophes. The priests continued, "The legends preserved here in Egypt are the most ancient, even though the human race is actually continuous in larger or smaller numbers, everywhere in the world where neither excessive cold nor excessive heats prevent human habitation. But from long ago, every impressive or important or otherwise outstanding event we hear about, whether it happened in your part of the world or here or elsewhere, has been written down here and preserved. What happens in your part of the world and elsewhere, however, is that no sooner than you have been equipped at any time with literacy and the other resources of city life, then once again, after the usual interval, a heavenly flood pours down on you like a plague and leaves only those who are illiterate and uncivilized. As a result, you start all over again and regain your childlike state of ignorance about things that happened in ancient times, both here and in your part of the world. As it relates to Atlantis, the priests recounted, "On this island of Atlantis, a great and remarkable dynasty had arisen, which ruled the whole island, many of the other islands, and parts of the mainland too. Sometime later, appalling earthquakes and floods occurred, and in the course of a single terrible day and night, the island of Atlantis sank beneath the sea and vanished." Unfortunately, most of the surviving Egyptian records have been lost to time or were destroyed with the Library of Alexandria in the 3rd century AD. That said, many of them do remain waiting to be rediscovered, like the Nag Hammadi Library in 1945. We also can't forget that Vatican City houses 35,000 volumes of ancient texts in their secret archives secured in a fortress-like part of the Vatican. These documents could serve tremendous value for the development of human history and spirituality if they were made available to the general public rather than left suppressed and collecting dust. That said, one text that is alleged to have survived is the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. Here I'll be sharing some passages from Billy Carson's book, Compendium of the Emerald Tablets. The Emerald Tablets were written by an ancient being known as Thoth the Atlantean. To date, there have been 2 manifestations of the Emerald Tablets. First, thousands of years ago, Thoth created multiple tablets of text and then concealed the locations of these ancient tablets. Second, Thoth chose to incarnate as Hermes the thrice great. As Hermes, he carried a single emerald tablet. Seekers of wisdom and knowledge have studied the tablets in the Hermetic tradition up until 1925. Hermeticism is a tradition of study and spirituality based on the writings of Hermes. At that time, Thoth chose to appoint Michael Doriel, also known as Maurice, to locate and translate the original tablets. Thoth ruled Egypt at a time that far outpaces our present understanding of precisely how old Egyptian civilization is. Ruling Egypt for 14,000 years, from 50,000 to 36,000 BC, Thoth became the highest of high priests of ancient Atlantis, trained by his own father, the master of masters of pre-Diluvian Atlantis. This ruling occurred after the floods that devoured the ancient civilization. Thoth ascended to Earth, where he led the development of a new civilization in the northeast corner of Upper Africa, also named Kem, or Egypt. Carson explains the strange tale of how the tablets were buried under the Great Pyramid for millennia, then moved to a Mayan pyramid in Central America in 1200 BC, where they were eventually recovered by Doriel in 1925. Dr. Doriel claims that after serving in World War I, he had a revelation from Thoth guiding him to recover the tablets and return them to their proper location under the Pyramid of Giza, which he did. Before doing so, Thoth gave Doriel permission to retain a translation of the tablets. It's on this translation of the Emerald Tablets upon which Carson based his research. For the skeptics listening, if I hadn't lost you earlier in the episode, the story of Doriel and Thoth the Atlantean may have pushed you over the top. Perhaps you can suspend disbelief as it relates to a pre-Diluvian advanced civilization. But a being that ruled Egypt for 14,000 years, who 38,000 years later provided divine guidance to Michael Doriel, and Doriel then recovered the tablets from a Mayan pyramid, sailed across the Atlantic, and moved them beneath the Great Pyramid after making an English translation. Isn't Doriel clearly a con man? That's certainly a possibility, and I do not vouch for the validity of Doriel's translation. That said, Carson makes a point in his book to highlight the fact that every major spiritual tradition operating today includes stories of intelligent beings from above who manifest on earth to pass along wisdom. Further, Thoth/Hermes has been an instrumental part of Egyptian and Greek philosophy and cosmology long before Doriel's 1925 journey. Perhaps it's time we reconsider the stories of our ancient ancestors, which we've labeled myths. Perhaps when Egyptians speak of Zep Tepi as the time of the gods, they're not using metaphor. Perhaps our present-day society has too limited of a conception of the word God. Perhaps planet Earth has witnessed abundant forms of intelligent life, and what different cultures have called angels, demons, hybrid humans, extraterrestrials, transdimensional beings, fairies, giants, psychedelic DMT machine elves, perhaps there is truth to their existence. Given the average human lives about 700 times the life of a fruit fly, is it inconceivable that within our cosmos of infinite diversity, non-human species exist that could live 700 times our lifespan? Perhaps Atlantis itself was a multi-species culture, the likes of which we can't even imagine. Perhaps humans in Atlantis actively interacted with non-humans like Thoth during this golden age, something we humans can again look forward to in the not-so-distant future. These are big questions, and for every question one answers about ancient Egypt, 100 new ones pop up. Whether or not you believe Doriel's story of the tablet translation, there is no doubt the messages contained within are thought-provoking. Here's Doriel's preface to the Emerald Tablets. Man's search for understanding of the laws which regulate his life has been unending, yet always just beyond the veil which shields the higher planes from material man's vision. The truth has existed, ready to be assimilated by those who enlarge their vision by turning inward, not outward, in their search. In the silence of material senses lies the key to the unveiling of wisdom. He who talks does not know. He who knows does not talk. The highest knowledge is unutterable, for it exists as an entity in lanes which transcend all material words or symbols. All symbols are but keys to doors leading to truths, and many times the door is not open because the key seems so great that the things which are beyond it are not visible. If we can understand that all keys, all material symbols are manifestations, are but extensions of a great law and truth, we will begin to develop the vision which will enable us to penetrate beyond the veil. All things in the universe move according to the law, and the law, which regulates the movement of the planets, is no more immutable than the law which regulates the material expressions of man. One of the greatest of all cosmic laws is that which is responsible for the formation of man as a material being. The great aim of the mystery schools of all ages has been to reveal the workings of the law, which connect man the material and man the spiritual. The connecting link between the material man and the spiritual man is the intellectual man, for the mind partakes of both the material and immaterial qualities. The aspirant for higher knowledge must develop the intellectual side of his nature and so strengthen his will that is able to concentrate all powers of his being on and in the plane he desires. The great search for light, life, and love only begins on the material plane. Carried to its ultimate, its final goal is complete oneness with the universal consciousness. The foundation in the material is the first step, then comes the higher goal of spiritual attainment. In the following pages, I will give an interpretation of the Emerald Tablets and their secret hidden and esoteric meanings. Concealed in the words of Thoth are many meanings that do not appear on the surface. Light of knowledge brought to bear upon the tablets will open many new fields for thought. Read and be wise, but only if the light of your own consciousness awakens the deep-seated understanding which is an inherent quality of the soul. It is expected that many will scoff, yet the true student will read between the lines and gain wisdom. Mystery number 5. Who is meant to revive the knowledge of ancient Egypt? The ancient Egyptians understood the relationship between consciousness, cosmology, and human physiology in a way we're only now beginning to comprehend. Whether or not the Hall of Records exists under the Sphinx, whether or not the Emerald Tablets are under the Great Pyramid, a tremendous amount of esoteric wisdom remains in Egypt, hiding in plain sight. The Egyptians encoded their knowledge in their art and architecture. And here again, I'll highlight John Anthony West and recommend his fantastic docuseries Magical Egypt for anyone who wants to dive in further. As the Egyptian priests told Solon 2,600 years ago, from long ago, every impressive or important or otherwise outstanding event we hear about, whether it happened in your part of the world or here or elsewhere, has been written down here and preserved. This leads us to the question, who is next meant to revive the important history preserved in Egypt? Could it be us? The materialist paradigm of reality tends to view time as linear because that's how we experience it. However, is it possible that time is in fact cyclical? That as the Egyptians recognized, the rise and fall of civilizations is as natural as the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth? and that a future generation, perhaps on the brink of their own apocalyptic transformation, could benefit from their wisdom. Nikola Tesla said that if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. I believe that time operates no differently. If we look at the zodiacal calendar, we see that our age of Aquarius is directly counter to the age of Leo. Is it possible that the ages of time resonate with their counterpoints, providing a certain yin and yang balance to the cosmos? As winter is to summer, Aquarius is to Leo. That the Egyptians understood this harmonic resonance and left us this gift to help us transition into our own golden age of humanity. The Egyptian, Mayan, and Vedic cosmologies all recognized time as cyclical. When 2012 hit and the world didn't end, people dismissed the idea of Mayan prophecy, failing to recognize that the Mayans never said that the world would end on December 12, 2012. Rather, that this date marked a transition point into the next age. I'd like to end tonight's episode with Thoth's prophecy, The Lament, as read by Graham Hancock. The future Thoth describes is dystopian, and yet it is hard to dispute the similarities in his depiction to the world in which we're headed if we're not already there. We tend to fear ideas of apocalypse because in our materialist paradigm, we view death to be the ultimate end of the individual. So wouldn't the apocalypse represent the end of human civilization? Unless, like how we've misunderstood time, we've also misunderstood death. Could it be that death is just a transition to what comes next, whatever form of conscious expression that takes? The last several years have seen the world get crazier by the day, and it doesn't appear to be reversing course anytime soon. Perhaps this is exactly the counterforce we needed to recognize maybe we don't have everything figured out. Maybe the people we've trusted as the leaders of the most advanced civilization of all time haven't been doing such a great job. And although we've got fancy technologies like ChatGPT and coerced vaccines, we're still a bit lacking in the spiritual development department. Perhaps if we are going through such a transition today, we can view it as an unveiling, as an opportunity to build something better. Not a new world order, but a beautiful world order. Here is the lament of Thoth to his disciple Asclepius.
Do you know, Asclepius, that Egypt is an image of heaven? Or to speak more exactly, in Egypt, all the operations of the powers which rule and work in heaven are present in the earth below? In fact, it should be said that the whole cosmos dwells in this our land as in a sanctuary. And yet, since it is fitting that wise men should have knowledge of all events before they come to pass, you must not be left in ignorance of what I will now tell you. There will come a time when it will have been in vain that Egyptians have honored the Godhead with heartfelt piety and service, and all our holy worship will be fruitless and ineffectual. The gods will return from earth to heaven. Egypt will be forsaken, and the land which was once the home of religion will be left desolate, bereft of the presence of its deities. O Egypt, Egypt, of thy religion nothing will remain but an empty tale, which thine own children in time to come will not believe. Nothing will be left but graven words, and only the stones will tell of thy piety. And in that day, men will be weary of life, and they will cease to think the universe worthy of reverent wonder and worship. They will no longer love this world around us, this incomparable work of God, this glorious structure which he has built, this sum of good made up of many diverse forms, this instrument whereby the will of God operates in that which he has made, ungrudgingly favoring man's welfare. This combination and accumulation of all the manifold things that call forth the veneration, praise, and love of the beholder. Darkness will be preferred to light, and death will be thought more profitable than life. No one will raise his eyes to heaven. The pious will be deemed insane, the impious wise. The madman will be thought a brave man, and the wicked will be esteemed as good. As for the soul, and the belief that it is immortal by nature, or may hope to attain to immortality, as I have taught you, all this they will mock, and even persuade themselves that it is false. No word of reverence or piety, no utterance worthy of heaven, will be heard or believed, and so the gods will depart from mankind, a grievous thing, and only evil angels will remain, who will mingle with men and drive the poor wretches into all manner of reckless crime, into wars and robberies and frauds and all things hostile to the nature of the soul. Then the earth will tremble, and the sea bear no ships. Heaven will not support the stars in their orbits. All voices of the gods will be forced into silence. The fruits of the earth will rot. The soil will turn barren, and the very air will sicken with sullen stagnation. All things will be disordered and awry. All good will disappear. But when all this has befallen Asclepius, then God, the creator of all things, will look on that which has come to pass, and will stop the disorder by the counterforce of his will, which is the good. He will call back to the right path those who have gone astray. He will cleanse the world of evil, washing it away with floods, burning it out with the fiercest fire, and expelling it with war and pestilence. And thus he will bring back his world to its former aspect, so that the cosmos will once more be deemed worthy of worship and wondering reverence. And God, the maker and nature, and it is wrought inside the process of time by the eternal will of the Creator.